Recording in progress. Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Good morning, honorable members. I wish to welcome all members who have logged in to the virtual mini-plenary session. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Honorable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precincts of Parliament and constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. The microphones are very sensitive and will pick up noise, which may disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone. Where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise a point of order. The Secretariat will assist and alert me in this regard. When using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. Lastly, I wish to remind you that we are meeting in a mini-plenary session and therefore any decisions will be taken in a full plenary session of the National Assembly. The first item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honorable K A Ramolobeng on the influence of global white supremacist movements on white nationalism in South Africa. I now recognize the Honorable Ramolobeng.
Thank you, House Chair. If permitted, can I kindly mute my video?
Yes, you may, Honorable Member.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, honorable members, I rise not only as an individual representing the African National Congress in this August House, but as a proud daughter of the people whose struggle for rights and dignity was long and odious, but who were triumphant in the end. Today, we have an opportunity to reflect on the founding principles of our democracy and to ensure that various movements in our own country and globally do not gather the momentum to unravel the gains we have made. It is important that we remind this House and the nation that the phrase, open quote, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, are not, close quote, are not merely words on paper, but foundational to the course of our democracy. These words capture the heartbeat of the Freedom Charter. Our Freedom Charter was forged after consultation with many ordinary South Africans across the lines of race, class, geographical spread. It establishes principles that came to be enshrined in our Constitution in 1996 and to which we are still honor-bound to adhere. Honorable members, the struggle for our liberation had no neutral terrain. It was a struggle characterized by endless hardships, forced evictions, racial profiling, and discriminatory practices that deny the majority of our people their right to humanity. Apartheid was a system that not only divided races, but cultivated a narrow sense of identity rooted in domination, isolation, and fear. By design, it promoted the idea of race above the aspiration of nationhood. Through social stratification, it elevated hierarchy above the principle of equality, and through its security apparatus, it ruled by suspicion and fear. Honorable members, while our democratic breakthrough in 1994 was profound, it was not the end of our story as a nation. It represented a new beginning that was premised on healing the wounds of the past, not through erasure, but through honest reflection, not through exclusion, but through the notion of a common citizenship under one flag. That is why the Constitution opens with the words, open quote, "We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past," close quote. This is the reason why, as a nation, we charted a path that strove to move in the opposite direction to what formerly prevailed, to shape a nation based on non-racialism and reconciliation, ideas that are far greater than mere rhetoric. They are the foundational principle of which we now stand and which we must vigilantly protect from every threat. Why South Africa belongs to all who live in it? 70 years ago, in 1955, the Freedom Charter proclaimed that our country belongs to all who live in it, black and white. This was a revolutionary declaration in the face of a highly divided country. It was a declaration to build a nation on firm ground, anchored by constitutional values and a recognition of the inherent worth of every man, woman, and child. Today, we are witnessing a pushback by groups of individuals who feel threatened by the advancement of equality and who mischaracterize efforts at redress as persecution. These groups have gone so far as to reject some of our country's most transformative legislation, such as the Employment Equity Act, the National Health Insurance Act, and the Bella Act. It is important for us to be clear that redress does not constitute revenge, and transformation is not discrimination. And it must also be clearly understood that non-racialism is not the absence of a cultural identity. It is simply stands opposed to the racial hierarchy that defined our country for many centuries. Currently, we are witnessing a resurgence of ideologies that are exclusionary, often hiding themselves in constitutional language, such as the cultural rights, minority protection, anti-communism, and even heritage preservation. Our Constitution already ensures the protection of cultural rights. Our coat of arms bears the words, "United in diversity." This is a fundamental principle which malign forces seek to undermine by fomenting the kind of a racial hatred that permeated our society pre-1994. Yes, we all have a right to freedom of speech and association, and that is a principle we continue to uphold. However, we also have a responsibility not to incite racial hatred, nor to spread historical inoccurrences to achieve political objectives. Rights always go hand in hand with responsibilities. This is something certain quarters of our society are apt to forget. At this hour in our history, it is paramount that we are vigilant. The lines between cultural preservation and racial supremacy must never be blurred. Members, as we have been taught by our long history of struggle, a democratic society is not defended only by the army or the judgments of our courts. It is defended by the agency of the people, especially when we value common ideas and have a shared sense of understanding. Nation building is a continuous process with no predetermined destination. Our democratic dispensation ensures that a child born in Mamelodi or Lavender Hill, a child born in Sandton or Somerset West, sees themselves as part of one country, united by shared aspiration for our country. House Chair, we have to continue to build a South Africa where access for one group is not seen as a loss for another. We need to see each other as inherently deserving of respect simply because of our shared humanity. To love one's culture must not be equated with hating another, and redress must not be seen as revenge. We need to dismiss all such myths by using our policy instruments and through political and moral education. I say moral because this is an issue that transcends politics and goes to the heart of who we are as South Africans. There can be no real sense of ownership of ideas enshrined in our Constitution unless there is a moral impetus amongst people of all races that causes them to reject divisive language and racial hatred. This moral impetus does not come automatically for all. It has to be inculcated and taught. House Chair, the social compact envisioned by our Constitution therefore requires more than symbolic gestures. It requires deliberate, targeted action. This means strengthening the implementation of progressive laws such as the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, finalizing the enacting the Hate Crimes Bill to criminalize incitement to racial violence, supporting grassroots civic movements that work to bridge divides in our communities, and lastly, to ensure that the media and digital platforms do not become breeding grounds for radicalization, but spaces of learning, dialogue, and accountability. Honorable members, in all these ways, we set the tone for a non-racial country and defend it against bad actors who long for a return to the past. Let us model what we aspire to, personally and professionally, and let us deliberately counteract any narrative that tries to recast our people as a fragmented nation. We are one nation, one people, diverse in our cultures and belief, but united in our shared history and our shared future. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Reddy.
Honourable Speaker, members of the House, and all South Africans watching across the country, what I'm about to share with you today is explosive. This is information that has been deliberately kept from you, sealed behind court orders, spun by the media, and silenced in elite boardrooms. It's time the truth is told. To remain silent is to betray not only ourselves, but our children and the generations that follow. The topic before us, as House Chair, is the influence of global white supremacist movements on white nationalism in South Africa. And this is not just a theory, it is our lived reality. The Umkhonto we Sizwe Party welcomes this debate because the influence of global white supremacy is not abstract. It's direct, it's deliberate, and it's devastating. Let us be clear, white supremacist forces have never left Africa. They've changed strategy. Today, they operate through global corporations, foreign embassies, media ownership, NGOs, and crucially, local proxies in politics. And the face of their local project, it began with none other than the DA. Heavily funded by global donors and corporate elites, the DA was promoted as a new non-racial alternative. But after years of media coverage and billion-rand campaigns, it hit a ceiling, 17%. That's when global white capital shifted its strategy. Don't fight the ANC, infiltrate it. They didn't need a revolution. They needed a representative. And so they found one in Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. Let's ask the questions no one in this house dares to ask. How did Mr. Ramaphosa become a billionaire? Not because he invented something like Elon Musk, not because he built an empire from the ground up, but because white monopoly capital chose him, they sponsored him, and they enriched him. So he could become their inside man. Through his company, Shanduka Group, Ramaphosa acquired massive stakes in Lonmin, where he was on the board during the Massacana massacre, where 34 miners were killed. MTN, Standard Bank, McDonald's South Africa, Coca-Cola, Bidvest, and many more. Today, he is one of Africa's richest men. But whose money made him rich? Not yours, not mine. It's foreign capital. It's mining conglomerates. It's white-owned multinationals. And when the time came to secure the ANC presidency, these same forces bankrolled the CR17 campaign, pouring hundreds of millions of rands into his rise. And what did Ramaphosa do when South Africans asked, who funded you? He ran to court to seal the records. Why? Because he didn't want the nation to see that his presidency was bought and paid for by the very forces we are debating today, white supremacist global capital. And those who arranged this funding, they were rewarded. They sit among us as cabinet ministers, contracts, and access to the state. This wasn't democracy, it was a transaction. Our freedom was long sold to the highest bidder. That's how global white supremacist movements now control South Africa's political direction, by inserting their interests directly into our government, using figures who look like us, but who do not serve us. Honorable House Chairperson, let's come back to the topic. The influence of global white supremacist movements on white nationalism in South Africa. Today, white nationalism no longer marches with flags. It wears suits, it owns companies, it writes editorials, and it ensures that land remains unreturned, banks remain untransformed, and Black poverty remains the status quo. Let us look at how they attack those who dare to defy them. Siyabonga Gama made Transnet financially independent, growing profits from 27 billion rands to 32 billion rands. This is for the matric minister yesterday who attacked Siyabonga Gama, not knowing these facts. He has a double master's, by the way. Siyabonga Gama reduced over-dependence on American-made locomotives and brought China to supply 50% of the locomotives instead of 100% reliance on American diesel locomotives. This enraged global capital in New York and Washington. Look at Brian Molefe. He ended load shedding in this country, a fact that none of us can deny. During his time at Eskom, Lucky Montana, he revolutionized rail infrastructure at Prasa, prioritizing local suppliers and Black contractors. But what happened to them? They were vilified, not because they failed, but because they succeeded without serving white capital. That is how white supremacy operates. It rewards obedience and punishes independence. Today, South Africa is in darkness, literally. We are sitting with blackouts, not because we lack coal or skills, but because those who fixed Eskom were removed and energy was handed over to private interests. Today, Transnet not only moves 150 million tons of rail or on rail, while under Gama, it moved 230 million tons. They grounded the Chinese locomotives and told lies about Gama and China. Today, passenger rail carries only 20% of what it carried under Montana in 2015. All our gains have been reversed. This is white nationalist economics. Sabotage the public, sell them a private solution. Now let's speak about water. Millions of South Africans queue for water tankers while big business bottling plants continue operating uninterrupted. In places like eThekwini, people have been without water for months because the infrastructure has collapsed and no one in power cares enough to fix it. That is white supremacy in action, where basic human needs are commodified and the poor are abandoned. And who do they blame? They blame President Jacob Zuma, RET, and MK. But let me tell South Africa, you are not jobless because of President Zuma. You are not in darkness because of MK. You are not thirsty because of Gama, Molefe, or Montana. You are suffering because white capital has captured your government. The so-called GNU is not about unity. It is about protecting the economic status quo. It's about keeping Black people poor while white wealth is preserved, untouched, and expanding. That is why they fear MK, because we will not kneel, we will not beg, we will not be bought, we will not surrender, and we thrive on independent thought. MK is the voice of the forgotten, the angry, and the betrayed. And South Africans are seeing it all over the country through by-election results, as you can see. We say, number one, unseal the CR17 records. Let the people know who owns this president. The people that own this president are white supremacists, most of them foreigners. Two, investigate foreign influence in our elections and governance. Tell us how the DA grew from 17% to 22% in the last election. Tell us how the DA could predict in 2019 that it could become a 22% party when only 8% of the country supports the DA. Three, implement radical economic transformation without apology. And four, return the land to the original owners, transform the economy, decolonize the state. let me end with this, House Chair. With the prophetic words of great liberator Chris Hani. He said, "What I fear most is that the liberators will emerge as elitists, using the resources of this country to live in palaces while the poor remain in shacks. That day is here, but a new day is coming. The MK party is not just a party. We are a people's uprising inside parliament and beyond. The MK is a revolution. The MK is the people. Amandla aluta continua." Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honorable Smith.
Thank you, House Chair. Fellow South Africans, I stand before you today to reflect on the crossroads at which our nation stands, between the lingering shadows of exclusionary ideologies and the promise of a truly inclusive liberal democracy. We must begin by addressing an uncomfortable yet necessary truth: the continued presence and influence of white nationalism in our country. Though apartheid was formally dismantled 3 decades ago, its ideology still haunts our society today. Nationalism is an ideology rooted in exclusion. It insists on racial superiority, cultural purity, and political dominance. It falsely claims that the right of one must come at the expense of others. This toxic belief system has no place in South Africa today. It undermines the very foundation of our constitutional democracy, of human dignity, equality, and freedom. It sees diversity as a threat, not a strength. It fuels division and stokes fear. It erodes trust in democratic institutions, portraying progress as a zero-sum game. In stark contrast are the principles of liberalism, values that have consistently shaped the vision and direction of my party, the DA. The DA stands firmly on the pillars of non-racialism, individual freedom, and the rule of law, a market-based economy, and a capable state that serves all its citizens equally. These are not abstract principles. They are the foundations of a society committed to redress, where past injustices are acknowledged and addressed, not through division, but through inclusion and empowerment. They underpin a vision of sustainable economic growth and meaningful job creation, ensuring that every individual, regardless of race or background, has the opportunity to prosper. Nationalism is fundamentally about identity over ideas. It fixates on race and culture as the sole determinants of belonging. Liberalism, on the other hand, is about ideas over identity. It is rooted in the belief that people are individuals first, not representatives of racial categories. The DA believes that government should not classify people by race, but should instead focus on eradicating the material and systematic barriers to opportunities that were built by centuries of discrimination. While acknowledging the realities of our past, the DA refuses to replicate the logic of racialism in crafting our future. We insist that empowerment should be based on need, not race, a principle that seeks to unite, not divide. When nationalism fosters nostalgia for racial hierarchy, liberalism promotes a vision of shared prosperity. The DA believes in a responsible market economy, an economy that harnesses the innovation of the private sector while ensuring that government plays a central role in education, healthcare, and welfare. This is how we address inequality, not by handouts, but by building a society of self-reliant individuals empowered to make their own choices. The DA's liberalism is not laissez-faire. It is compassionate, pragmatic, and evidence-based. It supports broadening access to quality education, fixing broken municipalities, tackling crime and corruption, and ensuring reliable service delivery for all. Nowhere is the contrast between these two ideologies more visible than in their vision for the future for South Africa. Nationalism sees the future as a continuation of the past, a rigid representation of an exclusive identity. Liberalism, on the other hand, sees the future as a canvas of endless possibility. A united South Africa where race is neither a curse nor a privilege, where merit and compassion go hand in hand, and where government works for the people, not the other way around. The DA envisions a country where no child is condemned to poverty because of the circumstances of their birth. A country where we fix the education system so that all children can read for meaning by grade 4. Where crime is no longer rampant because policing is decentralized and effective. Where infrastructure is reliable, clean water flows in every home, and internet access is no longer a luxury. A South Africa where we grow the economy, lower unemployment, and invite investment with confidence and competence. And let me be clear, liberalism is not empathy. It is not neutrality in the face of injustice. The DA's commitment to liberalism is its boldest form of economic redress. It says we will not give up on building a society where freedom is a reality for all. It means fighting for the poor, uplifting the marginalized, and speaking out when institutions fail. We must also reject this false narrative that liberalism is foreign to Africa. It is not. The hunger for dignity, choice, and opportunity is as African as you can get. Liberalism is the pathway to true freedom. Jole ma Afrika borwa, rekagare ganako ya go bouta. Tsela ya karoganyo go ba tsela ya kotsi. Geta ka maikemisetso go ba pono ya go amogela. Dipheto tsa maano go ba go ba dipheto tsa tshepo. Democratic Alliance e kgetlhile tsela ya yona. Go le emela ka tsela ya maleba. Go direla bona bokamoso jo bo bolokegilego, jo bo bulegilego, le jo bo lokilego bja Afrika Borwa. DA e mema marafi ka moka ya lefatshe. Kudu ya dudi ba naga ya Afrika Borwa re sa kgethe go ya ka mmala. Bananyane le bagolo ba shwa ka moka ba naga a re shwarishaneng tsela mogo. In conclusion, we must resist the temptation to long for the past and retreat into our corners of comfort. Let's instead confront nationalism with the moral clarity of liberalism. Let's build bridges, not walls. Let's recognize the dignity in each other's dreams. Let's stand as one South Africa that truly belongs to all who live in it. United in our diversity, strengthened by our differences, and inspired by our common destiny. Thank you, Kaleboch.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Kumbaka.
Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, let me start by saying each successive generation in our country has had to grapple with the question, what kind of nation do we want to be? This question carries constitutional and political connotations, but this question carries not only constitutional and political connotations, but also personal ones. It speaks to every one of us. It is a question that has a bearing on the child walking 10 kilometers to school each day, the worker that rises at 4 a.m. to get to work on time, the farmer toiling on his land, and the youth scrolling on their phones with no opportunities at hand. The question of who I am and what kind of country I wish to live in affects all of us. In some way, we are all both shaped by and currently shaping this country and the ideals that unite us or should unite us. Our Constitution in Chapter 2 enshrines the right to equality, human dignity, and freedom from discrimination. These are not abstract ideals. They are legal commitments guiding our public conduct, policy, and institutions. Our National Action Plan to combat racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance from 2019 to 2024 provides a framework to address systemic racism and emerging extremist ideologies. Honorable members, I believe all of us gathered here today share a common understanding that our country must not be divided along lines of race, class, or identity. We all wish to put that way of life behind us and move towards a united country in which every person is accorded the value they deserve simply because they are human beings. However, we are currently witnessing a longing in some quarters, it would appear, to return to this former discriminatory, racially divided social structure. Those who spread this way of thinking disguise their intentions, sometimes using terms picked up from our own constitution, and using terms such as cultural rights and minority protection. But their intentions are certainly to create division through this old age tactic of divide and conquer. Their hate-filled ideologies are spread largely through social media, and they appeal to people who cannot tolerate differences, nor having to share power and the country's economic resources with those whom they are formerly oppressed. South Africa is also party to the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, binding us to prevent and address racial hate speech, incitement, and extremist mobilization. This must be matched with proactive education reform, civic dialogue, and digital literacy initiatives, as outlined in our social cohesion and national building policy framework. Honorable members, around the world, we are witnessing how rapid fragmentations can grow when people feel nervous, separated, or unheard. Ways of thinking that used to be in the margins are now finding ways to enter the mainstream discourse, not only through violence, but through misinformation, manipulation, and the quiet normalization of exclusion. On the domestic front, we have worked very hard to build something different. Our democratic dispensation was never just about universal suffrage. It was and is a system designed to ensure that the inherent dignity of every person is recognized and that all have equal access to opportunities. Our democracy was built on the principle that all South Africans have a rightful place in our country. That principle must never be underestimated, as it is what binds us together as a people. A united nation cannot be built on rhetoric alone. It takes the effort of every person and in every sector in our society. Our nation building project is affected by what is happening in our classrooms, in our churches and mosques, on farms and boardrooms, and in our everyday deeds. The stories we tell about ourselves have a tremendous and emotive power. They fill our imaginations, shaping our ideas of what is most valuable and good and what is worth striving for. When dissatisfied and bitter people begin banding together, touting unrealistic and regressive ideologies, they muddy the national imagination and undermine the more noble idea of a united, diverse, and a non-racial country founded on justice and equality. At this critical juncture in our history, we need to ask ourselves, what stories are reaching the ears of young people? Are they being taught to embrace diversity or to be afraid of it? Are they fully equipped with the tools of analysis to be able to think critically, or have they fallen prey to conspiracy theories that appeal because of their simplistic answers to a complex reality? Are the communities we are creating inclusive for everyone with no one left behind? The painful truth is that when some people feel disenfranchised as a result of being left out, whether economically, culturally, or socially, they become vulnerable to ideas that appeal to their sense of grievance and are essentially divisive. It is critical in the fight against extremism that we advocate for inclusion. Those of us who are privileged to lead must speak boldly and repeatedly for inclusion, tolerance of diversity. Indeed welcome it and embrace it wholeheartedly. There must be no one who feels unheard or invisible in the country of their birth. Honorable members, we need to acknowledge that a security-centric response alone is not sufficient to fix what is mainly a social and moral problem. Yes, it is important for the state to act when there are threats, but we also need to enunciate an ability to counteract negative forces before they occur with a better narrative, one that speaks of the inclusion, diversity, excellence, and valuing of human life. That is why there must be cooperation between intelligence services, social development, educators, and civil society. We must be able to spot the signs early before they escalate into something bigger, whether it's through social media, isolated communities, or the targeting of vulnerable groups to advance these tendencies. Honorable members, the threats to our democracy will not always be loud or visible. Sometimes they will be subtle and they will find fertile ground where there is doubt, mistrust, and alienation. They present themselves through a widening of the cracks of the past and find a soft landing as a result of growing economic inequalities. We must not allow distorted histories to breed resentment. We need to stand up for the dignity for all those who live in our country and actively counteract destructive narratives with a better one and with evidence to the contrary. It is critical that we protect the soul of our country from any forms of division. Our purpose in this House is not only to legislate, but to provide leadership to ensure that we are able to achieve our objectives of nation building. This is so much more than legislation alone. Let us avoid being dragged into a situation where we all begin using the language of us and them. Such a language will never allow us to prosper. And as I quote President Nelson Mandela, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. This quote from President Madiba is a reminder that division is not our natural state of being. It is something that is learned over time. In the same way that division and disrespect is taught, unity and mutual respect can be taught. We must continue to use this arm of the state to teach respect over hate and also promote the value of truth, which is in today's quagmire of misinformation and half-truths. We need everyone working on this project, especially our educators, who must teach young people to recognize flawed arguments and get them critically engaging with issues of our day. Young people who have not been taught to analyze and present logical, truth-based arguments are easy prey for manipulators. And as I close, honorable members, it is critical that we honor our Constitution in word and deed, keeping its principles of mutual respect and tolerance always uppermost in our dealings. This, coupled with a focus on excellence in service delivery, is the only path to a united, prosperous, and happily diverse national character. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mhlongo.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief and President of the
Honorable
EFF.
Chairperson, the IFP stands for peace,
No,
democracy.
Chairperson.
No, Honourable
IFP,
Member,
they know
on
they can't
order,
speak before the EFF
order,
speaks.
Honourable Members. I recognize the Honourable Mhlongo. The Honourable Mhlongo will continue. The IFP comes afterwards.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me greet the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF, Commissars and Crown Forces. Fellow South Africans, today we rise to deliberate on a matter that strikes at the very heart of our democracy, national conscience and collective dignity. The rise and re-election of a white supremacist, Donald Trump, as the President of the United States has emboldened white nationalist and racist movements such as AfriForum, Solidarity Movement, and many others to commit treasonous acts of economic sabotage that threaten the lives of many South Africans. These racist organizations have an entanglement with the supremacist ideology of the Afrikaner Broader Bond, which was an ultra-secret right-wing white racist organization that ran the affairs of the apartheid state and acted as its lifeblood and brain. House Chairperson, there was no top leader of the apartheid state who was not a member of the Broader Bond. It was this same Afrikaner Broader Bond-led government that on the eve of South Africa's democratic dispensation shredded all documents that were in the state institutions to get rid of evidential material that implicated judges, magistrates, bankers, businesses, property owners, senior politicians, and international conglomerates that supported and were embroidered in the apartheid machinery and acts of genocide. Those destroyed documents, hard drives, and floppy disks would have given us a deeper insight into the medical experiments that were conducted on our people, as well as how oranges and other products were injected with HIV and AIDS virus and cholera, then spread in black townships with the intention of depopulating black people. To this day, we will never know about the finer details of notorious cardiologist Walter Basson's top secret project COSE, which was an apartheid-era chemical and biological weapons program that sought to clandestinely sterilize blacks without them knowing to curtail their numerical majority. Today, it seems this evil organization has morphed and operating under the guise of AfriForum and Solidarity, with its leaders influenced by the ideology of the Afrikaner Broader Bond to undermine the human dignity of black people as a race. Their white racist supremacist modus operandi is known for promoting white nationalist and white supremacist views, which are inherently discriminatory, violent, separatist, and harmful to Black people in general. This mentality is always driven by a false sense of superiority based on the pigmentation of their skin, and when that perceived superiority is questioned, problematized, and put under scrutiny, it tends to create false narratives of white victimhood to pledge global solidarity from those who believe in the idea of white supremacy, and in the case, Donald Trump. The political entanglement of AfriForum and Solidarity, alt-right wing in the United States, and many other global white supremacist formations and powerful individuals such as Trump, Elon Musk, comes from these nefarious symbolisms of racism, political power, hatred towards Black people, and greed. Truth be told, Chairperson, AfriForum and Solidarity have not come to terms with the reality that apartheid is gone and that their illusion of a Boere Afrikaner Volkskrant is a signifier of a deep-seated racist pathology that is eating them like a festing sore. Their apartheid nostalgia and ideas of separate development is a direct attack not only of the democratic values of a post-apartheid South Africa, but also an assault on millions of South Africans who have suffered and died under apartheid. These white racists hate Black people with passion, so much that they even concoct lies, misinformation, and propaganda about the country's domestic affairs, creating a false narrative of white genocide, Land Expropriation Act, and white victimhood to get attention from their grand wizard of a global Ku Klux Klan's Triple K, Donald Trump, as the former ambassador Ibrahim Rasool correctly categorized him. While they cry foul about white genocide, real genocides are being carried out in Gaza, where Palestinians are being slaughtered with impunity, in Myanmar, where the Rohingya were ethnically cleansed, and in Sudan, where mass killings continue. Let us be clear, Chairperson, the so-called white genocide is a myth and rebranding of the apartheid-era dog whistle known as Swart Heifer, the black thread. It was used then to justify racial separation. Today, it is used to resist redress and block justice. The establishment of white-only enclaves like Orania and Klein-Fontaine is a modern expression of the Swart Heifer mentality. These communities are antithetical to our democratic vision and have no place in the inclusive South Africa we're building. As we deliberate on the growing influence of global white supremacist movements and their impact on white nationalism within South Africa, it is important to highlight a concerning development. The Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF was deliberately and unjustly denied a visa by the British High Commission. This decision has prevented him from going to the UK to address students at the University of Cambridge, where he was scheduled to speak tomorrow, the 10th of May. This cowardly move by the UK government constitutes a blunted weaponization of bureaucratic processes aimed at silencing the voices of the EFF. It is a deliberate attempt to obstruct our efforts to build internal solidarity against Western imperial forces. We remain resolute in our position that the British monarch continues to owe a profound debt to the world for the colonial crimes they committed against humanity. White supremacy must fall in our lifetime under the EFF government. Orania and Klein-Fontaine are also going to fall in our lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is from the IFP.
Honorable Chairperson, the IFP stands for peace, democracy, and the rule of law. Our struggle has always been about building a South Africa for all who will live in it. Therefore, when white nationalism, fueled and emboldened by international white supremacy ideologies, take root in our nation, we must confront it without hesitation. Let us be clear. White nationalism in South Africa is not just a domestic issue. It is part of a broader global pattern. These ideologies find fertile grounds in South Africa, where unresolved legacies of apartheid still shape inequality and racial tension. Global white supremacy content circulates freely on a social media, where it influences local groups, reinforcing narratives of victimhood, fear of a so-called white genocide, and calls for separatism or return to white minority rule. The tragic truth is that South Africa is not immune to radicalizing effect of these transnational digital movements. As the IFP, a party born out of the struggle of dignity and democratic freedom, we are deeply concerned by this growing trend. These movements are not only decisive, they are dangerous. They exploit fear, thrive on misinformation, and aim to destabilize democratic institutions under the false banner of a heritage or self-preservation. Some may attempt to frame this development as isolated expression of cultural identity. But let us be clear, when identity becomes a weapon to exclude, to dominate, and to intimidate others, it ceases to be culture and become extremism. What we need is vigilance. We call for the strengthening of our domestic intelligence capabilities to monitor extremist network. We call for partnership with international organizations to disrupt the spread of hate speech and white supremacist propaganda online. And most importantly, we call for leadership, political, civil, and cultural, that speaks to unity, mutual respect, and the protection of our democratic values. South Africa cannot afford to ignore the influence of global white supremacist movement on our soil. White nationalism is, if left unchecked, poses a threat to our social cohesion, our democratic order, and our very identity as a free and a multiracial society. The IFP remains committed to rejecting all forms of racial supremacy, foreign or domestic, and to building a South Africa united in its diversity. We stand for unity, not for uniformity, for dignity, not domination, for South Africa, for all her people. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker on the speakers list is the Honourable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I actually expected the PA first to have something to say. But Honourable Chair, let me open by stating clearly, neither I nor the Freedom Front Plus regard race as a social determinant. As my neighbour, an anthropologist who retired in Urania recently remarked, race doesn't count for much. It may assist in dealing with the climate, but that's all. It is culture that counts. Western civilization has often been said to stand on the three pillars of Jerusalem's religion, Athens' science, and Roman law. Some add a fourth, Germanic sense for organization. Colonization and conquest is characteristic of major powers all over history and all over the world. And indeed, the West had overextended itself until World War II. Yet even after the empires fell, the era of globalization followed, especially since the 1990s, and it can be described as the world's voluntary acceptance of a superficial form of Western economy and lifestyle. Yet, in this superficiality, the West has gradually distanced itself from its pillars of existence. It has retreated into an increasing self-loathing mindset. During the Follis campaign, many Westerners competed to fall first before they were asked to do so. In recent history, Europe followed social policies which can only be described as suicidal in the self-loathing spirit mentioned above. The pendulum was drawn so far that it would inevitably at some stage swing back. And that is what the recent election results in Europe and the USA signify. The constitutional jurist Prof. Koos Malan calls it the Paleo Revolution, a revolution back to the origins of Jerusalem, Athens, and Rome. That is not white supremacy. It is a remarkable rejuvenation of the Western spirit. Indeed, as a Google research shows, white supremacy does exist. It is on the margins of Western society. And to reduce the current renaissance of Western values to white supremacy is actually just intellectual laziness. It's a way not to seriously engage with it. Likewise, with the South African version of the story, Afrikaners maintained a minority government long past its shelf life, and oppression of black resistance was brutal. It crumbled under international pressure and own internal loss of credibility, although it was never even remotely near military defeat. After 1994, it was common for Afrikaners to distance themselves from their past and and their identity, and just to try to excel as individuals, as the Honorable Smith presented it to us. Make yourself indispensable, and merit will always be recognized. It is 30 years on, and it's not working. Wherever Afrikaners prove to be indispensable, it is now declared untransformed. An Afrikaner asserting individual merit is a remorseless white supremacist. The underlying question is how to deal with South Africa as a multinational state. African nationalism, Pan-Africanism, and liberalism today expose their commonality to recognize only the individual and the state as legitimate political actors. That impoverishes public and political life and indeed leads to the totalitarian state. 30 jaar na die politieke nederlaag van 1994 het Afrikaners tot verhaal gekom. Afrikaners wil oor niemand anders heers nie, maar ons is ook nie vir onderhorigheid gebore nie. Om te wees wie ons is nie om enigiemand te haat of as minderwaardig te beskou nie. Met wederwysige erkenning kan ons saamwerk, of die regering kan voel hoe dit voel, om aan die verkeerde kant van 'n vryheidsstryd te wees. Dit is die keuse.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Kobe.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable Speaker, white supremacy is the belief that white people constitute a superior race and should therefore dominate society to the exclusion and detriment of all others. This ideology was deeply woven into the fabric of our society. It was entrenched, legalized, and elevated through colonialism and the crime that is against humanity that was apartheid. Today, the rise of white nationalist and supremacy movements globally poses a threat to the democratic, non-racial project that we as a nation have been building to undo these legacies. Tragically, House Chair, we see political parties, some right here in this very august House, preying on people's anxieties and fears for cheap political gain, pitting South Africans against each other. One recent example that is close to home was when one white mayor was lauded for observing traditions of a State of the City address, while Dr. Moya, a black mayor, was vilified for doing the exact same at half the cost. We must understand, House Chair, that these attacks are because Dr. Moya has made remarkable progress in ensuring that all residents receive the dignity of services and not just some. We must not allow the ideology of white supremacy to win. Social media has also amplified these ideologies, spreading fear, division, and resentment. We have seen the likes of Elon Musk attack our country, and we must ask the question why. It's because our nation is a direct threat to the ideology of white supremacy simply because it stands for the opposite. We are a people united in our diversity. We draw strength from our shared commitment to heal the wounds of the past and build a country where all belong, not just the privileged few. We may stumble and we may falter, but House Chair, we have made real progress. And that progress is the antithesis of white supremacy. Honourable Speaker, as we look at the facts, we know that the work is far from over. The legacy of white supremacy continues to shape our social and economic structures, but we as Action SA will work to continue to dismantle the remnants of it that continue to permeate our society today. Just this week at the Apartheid Museum, Action SA reaffirmed its commitment to economic justice. We announced our intention to table a draft resolution in terms of Rule 119 to establish an ad hoc committee in the National Assembly. This committee will be tasked with the urgent mandate of investigating, deliberating, and shaping reforms to achieve genuine and transformative economic justice. We encourage all on this platform to support this resolution. We have put forward clear proposals, including inclusive economic empowerment, social investment grants, housing, land reform and spatial justice, gender justice, and social cohesion. We, as proud South African patriots, and members of Action SA firmly reject the worldview of white supremacy. We are steadfast in our mission to build a non-racial, inclusive, and just society. We will not allow the sickness of white supremacy to infect the democratic nation that we are building brick by brick. And when history writes this chapter, let it show that we stood on the right side as engineers of a united, socially cohesive, and truly non-racial South Africa. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Zibi.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. I hope this debate is the beginning of a process that will bring us, hopefully, to results that we can all be proud of. White supremacy and white nationalism are on the march in Europe, North America, and here in South Africa. It is insidious and dangerous to the very fabric of our democracy. Those behind it are driven by fear, a fear that the world and its institutions are, in their view, becoming too diverse and democratizing. They feel that Western values, by which they mean white domination, are under threat. The ability to gain citizenship in Europe and the US by black and brown people is seen as a threat, driving a racist, xenophobic sentiment that rides on the back of socioeconomic difficulties worldwide. It is the same here in South Africa, where some of our citizens who belong in this movement believe equality amounts to discrimination. But we must recognize that this movement has chosen social media platforms and YouTube as a terrain on which they are going to plant their poison. They produce content that is compelling and memorable and gives its converts the talking points they need to grow their agenda. Part of the technique is to use anonymous accounts, usually run from Eastern Europe and North America, to infiltrate local national conversation. They do not only espouse white supremacist positions, but also pose as a version of the so-called black nationalist bourgeoismen they tell their recruits to be fearful of. They use these anonymous accounts to give reason for their recruiters to say, "Ewa, we told you, these people hate you. They want to kill you. You must fight back." This is a widespread and coordinated effort, House Chair. One of its strengths is the indoctrination of boys and young men into misogynistic politics. I urge members of this House to look at their social media platforms and search for red pill generation to see the thickness of the hate local young men now have for women on the back of this movement. The same accounts espouse deeply xenophobic sentiments where every immigrant is the devil. We must be careful and focus on what I call radical national unity, which is to tackle our national racial and gender inequities head on and fast so that we do not provide room for more division. We must evolve our regulations quickly and deal with a phenomenon that exploits freedom of speech to plant poison from beyond the shores of South Africa. If we do not, our beloved country will be engulfed in a conflict we do not even have the tools to control. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is there a speaker from ATM? Then I would like to call then the next speaker is the Honourable Maumapelo.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll also make a request that I switch off the video. I'm not in a good space.
I can see that. Please switch off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and greetings to the honorable members and South Africans who are following the proceedings of this debate on platforms that are provided by government through the legislature and parliament to make democracy accessible to our people. Chairperson and honorable members, I think I must leave the speech that I was going to present here and deal with some of the issues that have been raised by some of the honorable members. From the outset, I think it will be important for us to clarify that the African National Congress is a revolutionary African nationalist movement and a disciplined force of the left. What we mean by discipline of force of the left, among other things, it means that the ANC will not look for simple solutions to complex problems, which are not only facing South Africa, but are facing the entire world. That is why, as the African National Congress, we believe in multilateralism. We believe in resolving conflicts through dialogue. We believe that the United Nations and all its ancillary bodies has to be transformed in a manner that ensures that not only South Africa, but the rest of the countries in the South indeed see the United Nations and its ancillary bodies as a body necessary to make sure.
Speaker, order.
What is your point of order, Honorable Member?
Thank you, House Chair. Will the honorable member on the podium, will he be willing to take a question?
Honorable Mamapelo, do you want to take a question?
Yes, in the afternoon when I'm done.
Please proceed, Honorable Mamapelo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. We are an organization that believes that the United Nations has to be used as a tool that is transformed to make sure that we reposition the South relations with the North relations. The National Democratic Revolution, which is punted by the DA et al. As Swart Gefar, basically means the following: that we seek to build a united South Africa, a democratic South Africa, a non-racial South Africa, a non-sexist South Africa, and a prosperous South Africa. In the same context, this year we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter. And we want to make it plainly clear that when we say South Africa belongs to all who live in it, we don't mean, among other things, that there must be recklessness and anarchy and do as you please in a country that has got a constitution and people who respect the law. I want to make an example, but before I want to come to it, honorable members, remember that we are where we are today as Black people sitting at 64% of poverty, among other things because white people had taken deliberate decisions to make sure that Black people are dealt with. And I'm saying this in respect of what Honorable Smith and Honorable Boshoff has said. What is their argument? Their argument is that liberalism must reign supreme in South Africa. That is only the form of political and governance system that must reign supreme here. Now, what does liberalism, among other things, mean? It means that there must be less state role in making sure that you deal with injustices of the past coming from colonialism and apartheid. Now, I want to remind Honorable Smith and Honorable Boshoff that from 1652, our problems have been multiplying as Black people in this country. As if that was not enough, in 1950, there was an enactment of Population Registration Act. In the same year, Group Areas Act. 1953, Separate Amenities Act. 1949, Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act. 1953, Bantu Educations Act. 1913, the Land Act. Now, these are laws that did not fall from heaven. These are laws that were designed by human beings who regarded themselves as superior human beings. And the only rationale to that characterization of superiority.
Honorable Mamapelo,
Honorable
my apologies for interrupting you. There's disturbance, Honorable Des van Rooyen of the MK Party. Can you switch off your microphone, please? Or may I ask the table just to mute that honorable member? Please continue, Honorable Mamapelo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable members, I'm succinctly summarizing the wrong notion which came from Honorable Boshoff and Honorable Smith, who believe that we must become a liberal state. Now, these acts that I'm talking about, which were designed by white people to deal with Black people, the only way of undoing them is to make sure that human beings, not based on their color, but based on the fact that we are South Africans, we have a democracy to construct, a democracy to deepen. We have to deconstruct all these laws that were enacted by the apartheid system. That is why Honorable Boshoff and Honorable Smith, it is important for us to pass the Bella Act. It is important for us to make sure that there is NHI. And I want to make an example on this NHI thing that you are opposing and you are going all over the courts about it. I grew up in a tiny village. My grandmother died from TB because there were no health facilities in that particular area. Today, the African National Congress government has ensured that people like my late mother, who are still alive today, will not die from such diseases because the African National Congress has made sure that there are facilities and universal access by South Africans to those facilities. The reason why NHI has to be there and must be defended is to make sure that our people who are in the periphery of our country are not only accessing these facilities, but they are only accessible. They're also accessible. Now, you can only do that, Honorable Boshoff and Honorable Smith, if the state intervenes in making sure that the poor are not forever suppressed in as far as health matters are concerned, as a consequence of this apartheid laws that I've indicated to you. Let's come to the Land Act. And I'm going to quote to you what Sol Plaatje said in 1913. And I quote, "Awakening on Friday morning, June 20, 1913, the South African native found himself not only a slave, but a pariah in the land of his birth." Close quotation. The reason why Sol Plaatje came with this quote is because men who regarded themselves as superior just because of the color of their skin designed this what happened in 1913. Now, to undo this, honorable members, to undo this, Honorable Smith and Honorable Boshoff, to undo the implications which are a consequence of the Land Act, where today 72% of the land is still owned by white people. The agricultural land in South Africa, 72% of it is still owned by white people. And agricultural land is where food comes from. It's where food security comes from. Therefore, you cannot come here and argue that you are against white supremacism when at the same time you want liberalism to reign supreme. That's political hypocrisy. That's twanarare usila kaka senwamoro. Sila kaka senwamoro. Ke batho ba ba tshwana le wena ba ileng gore ba re ba rata democracy, but at the same time ba batla go dirisa the same democracy gore nne santlhoko mo baaging ba rona ba batho ba ntsho. Now we need a role of the state. The state has to play a role, and until the state intervenes enough in the affairs of the economy, in the affairs of the land, in the affairs of the insurance companies, in the affairs of the banking system in South Africa, in the affairs of the ownership of factories in South Africa, we are not going to have stability in this country. And I wish our white compatriots can understand that for us to achieve prosperity, which the National Democratic Revolution is talking about, we will have to make sure that we support the majority of this country to run the affairs of this country. And as white people, we support their cause. Then there will be win-win for all South Africans. Thank you, Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you, honorable member. Al-Jamaa, the NCC, the PAC, UAT, Good, and then the DA, the Honorable Khobisa Ngaba.
Good morning, Chair. The global rise of nationalism is symptomatic of a backlash against globalization and its perceived failure to deliver a better life for people across the world. Today, it's most prominently embodied in several nation-first movements and extremist fringe groups with their vitriolic anti-immigrant rhetoric. Global media reporting on the rise of nationalistic tendencies continues to dominate headlines, and extremist ideologies, which were once considered on the fringe of society, have found fertile ground through global online networks. And we see parallels in Europe, where extremist parties have seen significant gains in major liberal democracies. Across the globe, there's a growing discontent with the lack of economic progress, either experienced or perceived by middle and working class families. Of course, where there is a fault, there must be someone to blame. In Europe, the decline in incomes and economic slumps are increasingly attributed to immigration and political systems. The result has been electoral successes for parties committed to tightening borders, deporting immigrants, and establishing illiberal democracies across the globe. What we see often is that it's easiest to blame some enemy other that has taken what belongs to the rightful people of a particular country. Very often that is immigrants, the left, and racial minorities. Today's topic is an invitation to apply this prism to the South African context. And certainly a venture onto Twitter suggests that nationalism is on the rise in South Africa as it is in the rest of the world. It's all too clear that too many people in our country are consumed by racial hate and have been co-opted into movements intent on sowing discord and division in our diverse multicultural democracy. Excuse me. But the truth is that the threat of nationalism cannot be attributed to any one race. It could not care less about creed or color. It only has one mission. That is to sow division, to breed hatred, and to pull communities apart. It is, at its core, an ideology that places identity over unity, supremacism over multiculturalism, and autocracy over democracy. Steeped in revisionist history, like we heard from Honorable Reddy this morning, nationalism can be felt in our own parliament. It is a loud and ever-present danger that we should all be concerned about. We have MK and its tribalist agenda wearing military fatigues in our august house, a visible symbol of an aggressive militaristic nationalism. Their manifesto calls for abolishing our constitution. Their members salivate for the dark days of apartheid-style parliamentary sovereignty when human rights were a pipe dream. They call for mandatory military service. They attack our judiciary, and they champion a retreat from the rules-based international order. They are led in this madness by an autocratic, sexist, homophobic, convicted felon There are also other parties that are running on an explicitly race-centric agenda, who are quick to make a boogeyman out of undocumented foreign nationals who are only here because of the failures in border management over the past 30 years. We also have members in this parliament who have sworn to uphold our constitutional values, including non-racialism and Ubuntu, while they cling to the struggle cry, kill the Boer. These are the many faces of a divisive racist nationalism that wants to divide our country. But there is an alternative, a justiciable liberal constitution that protects all South Africans, a nation rooted in human rights and dignity, committed to redress for the past, but not repeating past injustices. A people united in our diversity, not sorted, arranged, and caged based on our race. These are the principles that the Democratic Alliance will stand by, creating an open opportunity society for every South African, recognizing that diversity is our strength, not a weakness, championing a government accountable to both the Constitution and the people, not an unconstrained, all-powerful parliament with the power to trample on our hard-won freedoms. The fight against nationalism means a unified commitment to non-racialism and non-sexism within a protective constitutional framework anchored in human dignity, equality, and freedom for all. When all South Africans are at home in her borders, there will be no place for nationalism. When all South Africans have an equal stake in the nation's prosperity, when all live in dignity and safety, when all have equal opportunities to reach our potential and to achieve our dreams. This is the vision of the Democratic Alliance. It is a vision of a country where every single child is guaranteed safety, nutrition, and education so they can live and thrive in a proud and prosperous society. It is a vision of a nation where freedom is guaranteed, where fairness is non-negotiable, where equality is the watchword and the rule of law reigns supreme. That is the alternative to the maelstrom of hatred, violence, and racism that characterizes the nationalists among us. And that's the vision of South Africa that I prefer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Ramolobeng, it's your opportunity to answer to the debate now.
Thank you so much, House Chair. Can I request to mute my video as I did in the first when I opened the debate?
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, House Chair. House Chair, I rise to close what has been a very substantive debate in bringing together so many diverse views. This discussion has provided clarity on the issues that trouble us and has suggested that the way ahead must be firmly rooted in constitutional principle. Throughout this debate, we have been engaging in a key aspect of democracy, respectful debate. We should not underestimate the value of this debate, of this practice. At the same time, we must be cognizant that the practice of democracy is not neutral. Democracy does not attempt to revise history, but looks it squarely in the face and learns from it. Democracy never closes its eyes towards injustice. As members of this august House, it is important that we locate our arguments contextually and understand that our words transcend the corridors of Parliament and affect ordinary citizens who look to us when they are engulfed with critical challenges. This means we have a responsibility to ensure we move beyond slogans and positions our arguments responsibly, recognizing that these issues are complex, both in our own country and globally. Our democratic breakthrough in 1994 was nothing short of remarkable. Since then, we have been able to improve the lives of millions of South Africans. Through this arm of the state, we have made laws such as the Employment Equity Act, anchored in our guiding document, the South African Constitution. This act, along with many others, directly reflects the spirit of Constitution. In this case, Section 9, which guarantees equality of opportunity and mandates legislative measures to promote the achievement of this equality for all. The point that is often missed is that to achieve equality for all, redress is necessary, Honorable Ngaba. Honorable members, we acknowledge and respect the views of those in this House who are discontent with our affirmative action policies. They represent their arguments in the language of fairness, merit, individual rights, principles that we all own. But we must define fairness and be prepared to map out a way to achieve it after centuries of gross unfairness. We must recognize that historical inequalities continue to shape access, opportunity, and power relations in our country. Over 60% of top management positions in the private sector in South Africa are still held by white individuals, despite their making up less than 8% of the population. Employment Equity Commission of 2023. It can never be adequate to apply abstract principles without understanding the material conditions that characterize the society in which they are applied. To ignore our history would be an injustice to those still on the fringes of society. Where we can certainly all agree is that corruption must be rooted out. There can never be equality of opportunity while the scourge persists. And to that end, we have instated a number of accountability institutions, such as the Public Protector, the National Prosecution Authority, the Hawks, the Financial Intelligence Center, and the Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, Corruption Watch, and others. These bodies have been instrumental in bringing to justice both public and private sector bad actors. We acknowledge that more needs to be done in this area, and our efforts in this regard are ongoing. Today's debate has also raised various concerns about the importance of identity, heritage, and cultural belonging. They are important in any society that is united in diversity. As a people, we can accommodate the unique heritage of individual groups within our society and forge a national identity that is inclusive of everyone. We honor both. What we cannot allow is for the interest of one specific culture to overshadow national interest, and as a sense of identity rooted in our commonalities. We must never oppose culture, but we must be alert to the danger of culture being used to divide. This danger raises its head all the time when communities begin prioritizing tribal interest, and I use the term in its broader sense, above our national interest. Members, the Promotion of Equality Act, the Bella Act, and the Employment Equity Act must not be seen as tools that divide us, but as vital stepping stones to the real equality and inclusion envisaged in our Constitution. These are necessary because discrimination did not cease to exist when racist apartheid laws ended. We see it still in its subtle forms in workplaces and in schools. Discrimination continues when narrow tribal interests are prioritized over our shared humanity. That is why I say, honorable members, that we all have the responsibility to promote a common love for our country and a strong sense of national identity that acknowledges our diversity. Members, let us not leave this debate divided. Let us use our constituencies to plant the seed of constructive engagement. Justice and reconciliation did not contradict each other. They reinforced each other. What cannot be obtained without the other? Let us commit ourselves fully to the ideas of a vibrant, democratic state. As members of this House, let us work together to ensure that all South Africans have equality of opportunity and a place at the table. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ramolobeng. Honorable members, that concludes this debate. We shall now proceed to the last item on the order paper, which is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honorable Reverend Meshoe on the need for measures to ensure that the 500 million rand earmarked for Spaza Shop Support, the Spaza Shop Support Fund, is used effectively and is not misappropriated. The Honorable Meshoe.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Many poor South African consumers were failed by a government that allowed them to be sold inferior, expired, and even toxic food, Unregistered Spaza owners have been doing business from behind bars in shops that are used as bedrooms at night and toilets when the need arises. Unknowingly, taxpayers were forced to fund these illegal, unethical, and unhygienic operations because many Spaza customers are unemployed social grants recipients. Government recently launched the 500 million Spaza Shop Fund to support, among others, the recently registered Spaza owners. The aim of the fund is to boost local entrepreneurship and competitiveness in South Africa. If the aim of this fund is to boost competitiveness in the country, we should ask the question, who is competing against who? The ACDP argues that this Million Spaza Shop Fund should be used to train, develop, and skill local Spaza owners to boost and develop those that need training to increase and improve their competitiveness and level the playing field between locals and foreign nationals who are successfully running the overwhelming number of Spaza shops in the country because of the training they received back home. In August 2021, the Gauteng Department of Economic Development launched the Kasim Noto Fund, which failed to deliver its promises and has given rise to allegations of corruption. Many Gauteng tax shop owners believe they were scammed as the 100 million Kasim Noto Fund never benefited them as promised. The SABC also reported that monies from that Kasim Noto Fund has yet to be dispersed even by mid-August 2024. If Gauteng Spaza shop owners did not benefit from the 100 million Kasim Noto Fund, how will the country's small township businesses benefit from the recently launched 500 million Spaza Shop Fund? How will this fund be protected from the looters and the thieves? In May 2018, 6.9 million rands were found in a 27-year-old men's luggage at OR Tambo Airport. The money was in US dollars and South African rands. Not long after this arrest, a 30-year-old male traveler was arrested at Cape Town International Airport after he was found with 2 suitcases filled with money valued at over 10 million rands. According to the Hawks, the suspect was allegedly from Pietermaritzburg en route to the United Arab Emirates via Cape Town. The money was in South African rands and other foreign currencies. According to the latest transit report, South Africa is seeing an alarming rise in illicit trade, spanning multiple industries. Among these industries are Spaza shop traders who neither pay tax nor use our registered banks to do their transactions. South Africa was placed in the middle of the pack on a ranking system that assesses country structural capabilities to protect itself against illicit trade. The ACDP, because of these many problems, therefore proposes a 5-point plan to ensure that the money is used effectively to benefit local unemployed entrepreneurs in townships and rural villages. Firstly, we believe that support should be given to local Spaza owners who have registered their businesses with local municipalities and SARS. Having said that, the Spaza registration process itself should be reviewed. Our municipalities do not have the capacity to register all our Spazas in a short space of time and many owners cannot afford the fees of over 2,000 rands that are required. By the end of February, Gauteng municipalities, for example, had approved only 1,464 of the 17,290 applications they had received. Secondly, the list of all beneficiaries of this fund must be made public as and when they receive support with their full names and business registration details. They should even be required to display notices to this effect outside their shops. Thirdly, there must be a hotline for complaints from the public whenever there are notable abuses. Fourthly, beneficiaries should be regularly inspected by the environmental health practitioners. Fifthly,
Thank you, Honorable Meshoe. Unfortunately, your time is now expired.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Dikgale.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. As we mark the 70 years since the adoption of the Freedom Charter, we recall that the economic clause of the Charter proclaims that, open quotes, all people shall have equal rights to trade where they choose, to manufacture and to enter all trades, crafts, and professions, close quote. With this injunction in mind, successive democratic governments under the African National Congress supported the vibrant growth of the small, medium, and micro enterprises. In the post-apartheid era, South Africa has consistently prioritized inclusive economic development with a strategic focus on SMEs to a point of creating a fully fledged department of small business development with a sizable budget. SMEs are needed for job creation and poverty alleviation. This sector entails retail, micro enterprises operating in townships and rural areas, which represent a critical component of the local economy. Support for the development and upscaling of this subsector is critical for fostering a culture of entrepreneurship and self-sufficiency. Recognizing their socio-economic potential, the South African government introduced the Spaza Shop Support Fund as part of the broader SMEs development initiative. However, for this intervention to achieve its developmental goals, robust institutional mechanisms are required to ensure good governance, effective oversight, and financial accountability. The African National Congress is committed to these development goals as well, the improvement of our institutional mechanism to make sure we produce good governance, effective oversight, and financial accountability. The 2025 January 8 statement states that in order to improve our institutional mechanism in the township and rural economy, government has implemented measures such as registering Spaza shops, conducting regular inspections of food vendors, enforcing health regulations, and immediately shutting down non-compliant establishments. This indicates that we do care about Spaza shops and the township and rural economy at large. The township economy plays a vital role in advancing microeconomic development in South Africa. The township economy provides numerous business activities such as Spaza shops, hair salons, street vendors, and local manufacturing enterprises. These activities all play a critical role in job creation and poverty reduction. The township economy is estimated to be 6% of the South African GDP, and it is estimated to have 17% of South Africa's total employment. At the microeconomic level, the township economy stimulates entrepreneurship, promotes self-employment, and generates income within communities that are often excluded from formal economic networks. Moreover, the township economy serves as a breeding ground for SMEs, many of which have the potential to scale, formalize, and integrate into broader value chain. With targeted investment in infrastructure, access to finance, skills development, and supportive regulatory frameworks, the township economy can drive inclusive growth, reduce poverty, and address structural unemployment, particularly among youth and women. Spaza shops have long been a cornerstone of township and rural life in South Africa, serving as critical nodes of economic activity, self-employment, and community interactions. These small retail businesses are typically family-run and based within or near residential homes. While they may appear modest in structure, their role in sustaining township economies and supporting livelihoods is substantial and multifaceted. Spaza shops provide a vital source of income for thousands of township residents. For many individuals, particularly in areas with high unemployment, Spaza shops offer a gateway to entrepreneurship. The relatively low cost of entry and flexibility of operations make them accessible to a wide segment of the population, including women and youth. In this way, Spaza shops contribute meaningfully to reducing poverty and providing local economic empowerment. Beyond self-employment, Spaza shops generate job opportunities for others in the community. They often employ assistants, delivery drivers, and security personnel. By creating jobs both directly and indirectly through supply chains, Spaza shops help to stimulate the township and rural economy, which accounts for a significant portion of South Africa's economic activity. Spaza shops are economic lifelines and social anchors within township and rural communities. Their role in driving microeconomic development, promoting self-employment, and enhancing community well-being cannot be overstated. With proper institutional support and inclusive policy frameworks, Spaza shops can evolve into more sustainable and competitive enterprises that contribute meaningfully to South Africa's broader economic transformation agenda. To indicate that Spaza shops are critical in our economy, on the 19th of February 2025, the Department of Small Business Development released a report on the progress of the registration intervention for Spaza shops. The document highlighted that 48,304 applications has been received by the 15th of November 2024. The South African government introduced of the 500 million fund for the development of Spaza shops represent a strategic intervention aimed at strengthening township and rural economies and supporting the growth of SMEs. In the face of persistent unemployment, poverty, and inequality, this initiative serves as a vital tool for economic transformation, grassroots empowerment, and the formalization of informal business. Township and rural economies, including Spaza shops, have long operated on the margins of South Africa's formal economy, largely due to the spatial and economic legacies of apartheid. The 500 million fund is an attempt to correct these imbalances by recognizing the economic potential for informal and micro enterprises. By directing investment into Spaza shops, the fund helps integrate these businesses into broader economic planning and development strategies. Access to capital remains a key constraint for SMEs, particularly in underserved communities. The fund provides Spaza shop owners with much needed financial support in the form of grants, low interest loans, and working capital. This enables businesses owners to stock goods, improve shopping infrastructure, invest in digital tools, and enhance service delivery. Such investments increase the productivity and competitiveness of Spaza shops, which in turn strengthens the overall SME ecosystem. When township and rural businesses are supported, the benefits ripple through the local economy. With improved financial stability, Spaza shops can expand operations, hire staff, and source goods from local suppliers. In conclusion, this stimulates demand, creates unemployment opportunities, and keeps money circulating within the community. As a result, the fund contributes to building self-sustainable local economies that are less dependent on external interventions. Accordingly, the recent African National Congress, National Executive Committee Lokota, mandated the African National Congress-led Government of National Unity to boldly increase SMME financing and business services support by the public and private sector. This is the line of march, and we dare not betray these directives for the benefit of the people. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Dikgale. The next speaker is the Honorable Magafane.
Thank you, Chairperson. Is Honorable Mafagani, not Magafane.
My apologies.
No problem, you are forgiven. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, commanders, and fellow South Africans. Today I rise on behalf of Umkhonto weSizwe, not merely to speak, but to echo the cries of our people in the townships and rural villages, who have for decades survived, hustled, and fed their families through spaza shops, which are the heartbeat of local economics. Let us not forget, before malls came with their glossy brands and monopolistic pricing, it was spaza shops that kept Ekasi alive. It was spaza shops in Umtata, in Tembisa, in Kwamashu, in Buchabelo, in Ramasemula, in Guguletu, and many of our township and informal settlements that gave life to the Black entrepreneurs in the shadows of apartheid repression. And yet, decades into the so-called freedom, what has become of these lifelines? They are now a dying breed, crushed by the same system that once excluded us. A capitalist system dominated by white monopoly interest and foreign ownership, aided and abetted by the government that continues to not protect the Black majority's economic spaces. You need only to go to next door, to Botswana, to see how a government ought to protect its small businesses, such as spaza shops. Laws have been made to protect Botswana's businesses, and strict compliance is observed. Historical roles and decline of spaza shops. Honorable members, spaza shops once contributed up to 100 billion annually to the township economy in this country. This is according to an estimate by the South African Township and Rural Economic Lab. Spaza shops employed locals, kept wealth circulating in our economies, in our communities, and taught generations the basics of trading. That was before the government's negligence and allowed large retail chains and informal foreign operators operated wholesalers, often backed by illicit finances and unfair supply chain advantages, to flood and dominate township economies. According to the 2023 studies by the Sustainable Livelihoods Foundation, over 80% of spaza shops in townships are no longer South African owned. 80%. Our people, the rightful owners of this economic space, have been dispossessed, not by the legacy of apartheid only, but by a post-apartheid state that prioritized neoliberalism over Black empowerment. The 500 million question is, who will truly benefit? Now the government comes waving a flag, telling us of a total of 500 million earmarked to support spaza shops. We welcome the intention, but do we trust the execution? In a world full of hyenas, especially these ones with dollars in the mattress, who will guard the chickens? Lebaka la gore re ska le tshepa Kgoshigadi Dikgale ke gore ke kgale le di dira, e re ke le gopotse. In 2020, the COVID-19 SMME Relief Fund was riddled with irregular payments and preferential treatment. The Auditor General's report found that 1.8 billion was misappropriated, with township businesses mostly excluded. Till today, the offenders have not been brought to book. In Gauteng, the Alexander Renewal Project, which was meant to inject 1.3 billion into township upliftment, became a graveyard of ghost projects and incomplete infrastructure with no accountability to date. In KwaZulu-Natal, the Operation Vula Fund, meant to empower township enterprises, saw fund captured by politically connected elites, leaving real Spaza shop owners outside in the cold. The MK Party asked, what measures are in place to prevent this 500 million from meeting the same fate? The MK Party asked, where are these known foxes? Where there are these known foxes, are the chickens safe? Honorable Chairperson, the truth is bitter. The DA-ANC-led government has systematically failed to protect and empower Black working class economy. Instead, it has folded under pressure from global capitalism, allowing Spaza Shop to become casualties of deregulated markets and captured local governance. The MK Party asks, where is the legal framework that protects local traders from unfair competition? Where is the township zoning policy that gives Spaza Shop exclusive rights to operate in certain zones? Where is the financial infrastructure that allows them to access stock, credit, and technology on competitive terms? Where are the incorruptible inspectors to ensure that regulations and ordinance and bylaws are strictly adhered to? Daily, we see foreign-owned Spaza shops taking over every street corner, while local Spaza shops owners drown in red tape and are denied funding on technicalities. My friend. The MK Party's position and revolutionary solution. The MK Party says, enough is enough. We demand that this 500 million be treated as scarce economic repatriations for the Black poor who were sidelined under apartheid and betrayed at once when freedom and democracy ought to have changed their lives for the better. We propose the following measures to ensure the fund is not misappropriated. Number one, community-controlled funding boards. Set up local oversight committees comprising of Spaza shop owners, community leaders, civil society watchdogs to approve and monitor disbursements. Transparent criteria and reporting. Publish monthly updates on beneficiaries, amounts disbanded, support provided, progress towards realizing the objective of which the funding was based. We need performance and result indicators that are monitored and reported upon. Communities can monitor non-adherence and ensure that would be dividend stick to business plan, pure pressure and not scarcity and not secrecy. Ring fence the fund for South African citizens only. This is not xenophobia. This is economic justice. The fund must strictly benefit Black South African owned Spaza shop. Apartheid repatriations and redress never happen. It is time to start now. Capacity build and supply chain support. Establish a state-subsidized cooperative for stock procurement to ensure fair pricing and volume leverage for local Spaza shops. Number 5, ensure protection regulations. Develop and enforce bylaws that restrict big retailers from setting up shops within township trading zones without community consultation and Spaza shop protection measures. In conclusion, Chairperson, the struggle continues. A luta continua. Honorable members, we cannot allow Spaza shops to go down the same way as our land, as our mines, and as our wealth, stolen by those who never suffered to earn it. As Umkhonto weSizwe Party, we will fight for the soul of township economy. This is not about handouts. This is justice. This is revolution. This is what the Freedom Charter meant when it said, the people shall share in the country's wealth. We call on this August House to support measures that guarantees not just the effective use of the 500 million, but the economic liberation of our people. As the people says in the streets of Umlazi, in Kayelisha, in Davidton, in Soweto, in Toyando, and in Langa, Saswana, Rinyaka accountability fela, Rinyaka freedom economy. Amandla, viva to the Black township economy, and viva to the original owners of the Spaza shops. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mafagane. The next speaker is the Honorable Creer. Honorable Creer. Honorable members, am I audible?
You are, House Chair.
Yes, you are audible. It seems that Honorable Kriel is gone shopping.
Dankie, voorsitter.
Please proceed.
Dankie, huisvoorsitter. Die Democratische Alliance stands, as it always has, on the side of supporting small businesses. We object to the enriching of narrow few while needy South Africans are left behind. The DA stands for economic upliftment for all South Africans who need a leg up, not to the connected few, but to many innovative entrepreneurs making living in trying times. SMMEs are the engine of economic growth in many countries. Yet, unfortunately, in our country, SMMEs in previous administrations have not given the attention they deserve. Despite this, we have seen good growth from informal traders, Spaza shop owners, and other micro entrepreneurs. If managed well, the proposed 500 million support fund has the potential to be a game changer. The time has long passed for big announcements with flashy launches, yet minimal follow-through. South Africans need a growing economy that delivers much-needed jobs. In a country in dire need of redress, support for micro-entrepreneurs has been long overdue. Spaza shops are not just informal businesses, but pathways to closing our rampant inequality. The dignity that job creation and economic growth will give our communities is unmeasurable. However, if we get this wrong, we will take steps back we cannot afford. Our country suffered immensely due to corruption, mismanagement, and 9 lost years of poor economic growth and rising unemployment. Volgens die departement is die fonds 'n lewenslyn. Maar indien jy verby die politieke rasmetas skrap, vind jy die gevaar van dieselfde ou stryk wat al soveel vorige pogings laat misluk het. Bureaukratiese romslomp en oormatige administrasie. Suid-Afrikaanse Spaza winkels word bedryf deur hardwerkende moeders, oumas, werklose gegradueerdes, aspirante entrepreneurs en plaaslike broodwinners wat net probeer oorleef. Maar plaas daarvan om toeganklike en buigsame ondersteuning te ontvang, word hierdie besighede gevra om hulle pad deur doolhof van vorms, dokumente en regeringsversperrings te vind voordat hulle aan die ekonomie kan deelneem. Ons kan doeteenvoudig nie micro-entrepreneurs bemagtig met makro-bureaukrasie nie. Ons het dit voorheen gesien. Die TREP-program was vol verwagtinge, maar onderbestee. Die Spaza winkel ondersteuningsprogram tydens COVID-19 het onder sy eie administratiewe gewig in mekaar gestort. Duisende aansoeke is ingedien, maar slegs 'n handjievol is goedgekeur. Hoekom? Omdat die huidige stelsel ontwerp is vir amptenare en nie vir entrepreneurs nie. Dis hoekom. En die gevolg? Geld bereik nie die entrepreneurs nie. Drome word vernietig. Ekonomiese groei sloer en uit die aard van die saak werksgeleenthede kwyt. Voorsitter, romslomp is 'n amptenaar ding. Dit is 'n armoede valstrik. In plaas daarvan om ekonomiese groei te bevorder, word lae en lae administrasie bygevoeg wat ons mikrobesighede versmoor. We need to harness the full potential of entrepreneurship in South Africa for all South Africans alike. Spaza Shop Support Fund has the capacity to drive grassroots economic growth, stimulate job creation, and restore dignity to communities where opportunities have been largely non-existent. South Africans are wary of empty promises, funds vanishing into the hands of the political connected, and exclusion due to not being part of the cadre network. The question to the Minister of Small Business Development is not whether 500 million is sufficient. The concern is whether the entrepreneurs who require it the most will indeed receive any of it. Spaza shop owners do not seek charity. They seek support, dignity, fairness, and opportunity to compete and hire. They want to trade in an ecosystem of economic growth. If utilized wisely, this 500 million could improve thousands of micro enterprises grow in the economy, lower unemployment, and stimulate local industry. However, if mismanaged, the risk becoming yet another corruption scheme and the vision of inclusive economic growth will perish once more. Let us invest in a country's entrepreneurial spirit, not in cadre support. Let us develop business, not bureaucracies. Let us generate employment, not political fluff. Spaza shop owners do not want more promises. They seek reliable electricity, protection from criminal syndicates, and the ability to conduct their trade safely. They want economic growth, running water, and good infrastructure. Above all, they want to create employment opportunities for their fellow citizens. So South Africans have the talent to move forward in a more expanded economy that can create jobs. Small business entrepreneurs will unlock that potential. However, we need to reform the trade ecosystem and the red tape generated by the past governments. Hierdie 500 miljoen moet 'n keerpunt wees. Dit moet 'n geleentheid wees om die Spaza winkelbedryf te stimuleer, werksgeleenthede te skep en entrepreneurskap te bevorder. Maar sonder dapper bureaukratiese hervorming sal hierdie fonds bloot nog 'n projek op die kerfstok wees wat sal faal. Dankie voorsitter.
Dankie. The next speaker is the Honorable Mafulelwa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. A special greetings to our Commander-in-Chief, Commissars and Fighters, and all the entrepreneurs out there. Eyona nto exhalabisa kakhulu ke yileyo ukuthi ngomhla we-19 kuFebruary uMinister we-Small Business Development waye waripota phambi kwe-Portfolio Committee ye-Small Business Development ukuthi inkqubo yokubhaliswa kwezi-spaza shops iphele kubhaliswe 70% yabemi bangaphandle. Apho wachaza okokuba akuncediswanga mntu kwiphondo laKwaZulu-Natal, eNorth West naseNorthern Cape. Apho ke kuzindawo ezo ezisisizinda sezi-spaza shops. Nto leyo exhalabisayo kubemi boMzantsi Afrika okokuba ne-500 million yezi-spaza shops support fund abazuxhamla kuyo. Isimanga ke sesokuthi abemi boMzantsi Afrika bebelindele isisombululo se-food poisoning nokubona ukubotshwa abenzi bobubi. Leye registration imangaze bonke abemi boMzantsi Afrika, more especially that the minister failed to answer if that 70% foreign-owned spaza shops, is it complying with the 5 million investment into the fiscus as per the legal requirement, and who is policing that? Abemi boMzantsi Afrika banazo izpaza shops, banazo ii-tuck shops, kodwa umasipala ubehlisa ebonyusa ebafuna leya naleya kuba bona bengenaso isinyobo. Ayiqondakali ke into yokuthi le 500 million yeyezpaza shops less than 30%, kuba izpaza shops ezingu-70% zezabemi boMzantsi Afrika. Kuba ke futhi bengarejistwanga ngabom aba boMzantsi Afrika abantu ngulo rhulumente ke okhokhelwe yi-ANC. Urhulumente onenjongo zokuphuhlisa nezokuprioritize abemi nabavoti akathi abantu mabeze kuye. Uya ebantwini ngale ndlela aya ngabo xa ekhankasela ivoti. Uyazazi izpaza shops nee-tuck shops zabavoti apho zikhoyo. Urhulumente okhathalayo angayozibhalisa kwizpaza shops zabo impula zikalujaca ezingathathi ntweni. Angenza ne-online spaza shops nge-registration ukufikelela kwiindawo ezininzi. Singumbutho ke we-EFF asihambisani nokuxhatshazwa nokufakela abantu uxinzelelo le-stress egameni lokuthi bayanceda. Uminister makacacise kabanzi okokuba oosomashishini bezpaza shops kunye nee-tuck shops baza kuyifumana njani le funding support. Yimalini i-maximum ebekelwe usomashishini ngamnye, zintoni ii-requirements ezidingekayo, yaye ithini i-date yokuqalisa ukubanika isabelo sabo. Abo barejistileyo already baza kuqala phantsi ba-aplaye okanye i-database izosetyenziswa ukubanika isabelo sabo automatically. Ingabe nabo bazolinda baze baphelelwe lithemba njengabo aba-aplaya ngoJanuwari for i-Asset Assist Program abangekafumani impendulo kule department yakhe? Si-Economic Freedom Fighters siyaqhubeka ukuncedisa abavoti, sikwaqinisekisa ukuthi bayazirejista izpaza shops zabo mahala. Siza kuqinisekisa into yokuthi le 500 million ingarhwaphilizwa yaye ifunyanwe ngabantu abafaneleyo ukuyifumana. Siyamxwayisa ke uminister okokuba makohlukane nokunika abantu ii-equipments lesser than the amount they were approved for by the department. Kungenjalo uza kujongana nengalo yomthetho. Esakubona eNorth West izpaza shops zinikwe 3,500 endaweni ye-10,500, asifuni kuphinda sikubone. Sithi ke pheza minister, enough is enough, sidikiwe yi-corruption. Into esiyifunayo, sifuna oosomashishini abakhasayo baphuhliswe, bakhuliswe yaye bancediswe. Urhulumente ongena database yokwazi uba bangaphi oosomashishini abakhasayo kuMzantsi Afrika wonke ngurhulumente ongakhathaliyo. Asifuni abantu baphinde futhi bayahambe bayowa phaya belambile belindile kwii-queue ezininzi. kanti le technology eyokwenza ntoni sifuna ukwazi into okokuba urhulumente kutheni lento ekhethe ukubhalisa abemi bangaphandle ababalelwa kwizinga le-70% compared to abantu baseMzantsi Afrika abangaphantsi ko-30%. Yaye sifuna ukwazi into okokuba izawulungiswa njani leyo ukuba iKwaZulu Natal neNorth West neNorthern Cape ingakhange yona incediswe apha ekubhaliseni iziphaza shops. Siyafuna ke okokuba sithi le mali mayisetyenziswe ukuthi bakhuliswe bafundiswe nazo iziphaza shop ezo ukuba ziqhutshwa njani. Siyafuna uminister asinikeze ingxelo epheleleyo singeva nje ethi hayi ndiyo uyahamba yena uyolontsha i-500 million. Angachazi kabanzi okokuba abantu boMzantsi Afrika abaneziphaza shops nee-tuck shops bazawuncediswa njani. Kwaye sifuna ukwazi le mali into okokuba iya kobani. Yonke ke iripoti chairperson sithe ke mayenziwe detailed uba ngubani weyiphi indawo istrato kungamane kubizwa ii-percentages kuba le percentages into asiyazi noba u-70% ngabantu abahlanu okanye u-30% ngabantu ababini. Enkosi chairperson, ndiyabulela.
Thank you, Honorable Mahlowa. The next speaker is the Honorable Inkosi Buthelezi.
Honorable Speaker, the 500 million allocated to the Spaza Shop Support Fund has the potential to breathe life into our township and rural economies. It is a recognition at last that the informal sector, so often neglected and yet so vital, deserves meaningful investment and partnership. Yet we rise today with a deep sense of concern and not cynicism, for we know too well the tragic pattern that has befallen so many government support programs. But we must be honest, far too many South Africans have heard the word fund and learned to expect not support but scandal. The IFP stands here today to sound the alarm, not in opposition to this initiative, but in defense of its promise. We say, let this not be another fund that disappears into the fog of corruption, bureaucracy, political favoritism, and cadre enrichment. Spaza shops are more than just businesses. In our townships and in rural villages, they are lifelines. They are often the only accessible source of bread, paraffin, airtime, and dignity. They are run by mothers, fathers, gogos, and young people, many of whom have been shut out of the formal economy. And in rural areas especially, these enterprises exist within a living social fabric, led, guided, and supported by traditional leadership. This brings me to another critical point, the role of traditional leadership, myself being one of them. Traditional leaders are not relics of the past. They are present-day custodians of social and economic life in rural communities. The IFP has always affirmed their value, and we say clearly today, no support fund aimed at rural development can succeed without the meaningful involvement of traditional leaders. They must be consulted and empowered to assist in oversight and respected as partners in economic development. When the government works with Amakosi, it gains trust, cultural insight, and local legitimacy. When it bypasses them, it loses the people. To ensure the effective use of this 500 million rand, the IFP calls for 5 urgent interventions. 1, independent, transparent oversight, including civil society, the Auditor General, and provincial forums of traditional leaders. 2, a public database of beneficiaries, detailing their names, locations, and disbursements, that the people see where their money goes. 3, support beyond money, including business training, access to digital tools, and links to supply chains. 4, prioritization of local registered South African-owned spaza shops, especially in historically disadvantaged communities. And last but not least, real consequence management. No suspended investigations or shielded officials. Let wrongdoing be met with action, not apologies. South Africans are tired not only of corruption, but its predictability. Every time the government announces a relief fund, people brace themselves for disappointment. This time must be different. Let this fund be the beginning of restored trust between the state and the informal sector. Let it uplift not just economies, but communities. Let it include our traditional leaders, not ignore them. And above all, let it allow our people that the government can spend their money with their interests at heart. The IFP supports the intention behind this fund, but intention is not enough. Only implementation with integrity will deliver justice. Let us not fail the traders who rise before dawn, who sell through hardship. All is a lifeline to so many of them. They trade not for profit alone, but for survival, dignity, and the sustenance of their families. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Matopa.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Good morning, honorable members and fellow South Africans. Today, I come before you to address a matter of significant importance, the urgent need to ensure that the 500 million fund earmarked for Spaza Shop Support Fund is used effectively, transparently, and without misappropriation. Without strict oversight, this fund risks being misused. Just as we've seen in the past relief programs, corruption and mismanagement have plagued many well-intentioned initiatives, leaving deserving beneficiaries empty-handed. Spaza shops are the lifeblood of our townships and rural communities. They provide essential goods, create jobs, and sustain local economies. The government's commitment of 500 million fund to support these small businesses is a commendable step towards economic empowerment. However, we have seen in the past how well-intentioned funds have been lost to corruption, mismanagement, or inefficiency. We cannot allow this to happen again. To prevent misuse, we must implement strict accountability measures. The first point would be transparent application and selection process. Clear, publicly available criteria for who qualifies for the support. An independent oversight committee to review applications and prevent favoritism. Second point, direct benefit to Spaza shop owners. Funds should go directly to verified business owners, not intermediaries. Grants or low-interest loans must be tracked to ensure they are used for stock, equipment, or expansion, not diverted. Regular audits and public reporting. Independent auditors must monitor fund distribution. Monthly public reports on how many shops have been benefited and where the money has gone. The fourth point would be guard against over-regulation. While accountability is important, excessive red tape should not delay support to struggling Spaza shops. Many owners lack formal documentation, but are legitimate business serving their communities. Strict measures might exclude those who need help the most. Instead of burdensome audits, we should simplify the process and trust local committees to identify genuine beneficiaries. Delays could force more shops to close, hurting jobs and food security. Let's balance oversight with urgency, because when bureaucracy wins, the people lose. The fifth point would be community and media oversight. Empower local communities and journalists to report irregularities. A whistleblower hotline to expose fraud without fear. Point 6, consequence for abuse. Strong penalties for officials or individuals who steal from the fund. Fast-tracking corruption cases to restore public trust. In conclusion, fellow South Africans, the money is not for politicians, officials, or unscrupulous business people. It is for the hardworking men and women who run Spaza shops to feed their families and serve our communities. If we fail to protect these funds, we fail them. Of the 87,407 registrations taken in, 32,824 thereof are of foreigners. Minister, this is worrisome. As mentioned by Reverend Meshoe, the money is leaving our country and not circulating in our country. Let us demand accountability, transparency, and results. Together, we can ensure that this investment uplifts our economy instead of lining the pockets of a few. The time for empty promises is over.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much, Chair.
The next speaker is the Honourable van Staden.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, 5 years ago in 2020, the President announced that 500 billion rand would be used as emergency aid during the COVID-19 pandemic, and he was asked what precautionary measures he would put in place to prevent corruption. At that time, the President undertook to take the necessary steps and instructed the Auditor General to put mechanisms in place that would prevent irregularities. Later, in a report of the SIU, it was clear that either the President did not keep his word or the AG did not execute its instruction properly. Ons het gesien dat daar grootskaalse bedrog en korrupsie was in dieselfde tydperk met tenders vir persoonlike beskermende toerusting, waarby hooggeplaaste staatsamptenare betrokke was. En ons moet besef dat die korrupsieskandaal met die aankoop van PPE's tydens COVID-19 een van die spesiale ondersoekeenheid se grootste ondersoeke was, waarvan 'n bedrag van 13 miljard rand betrokke was. Die SOE het ook in November 24 aanbeveel dat 51 maatskappye geswartlys word weens hierdie korrupsie. Not only was there huge corruption with the procurement of PPEs, but in October 2020, the SIU told Parliament that fraud relating to the temporary relief scheme, known as COVID-19 tiers, at that stage amount to 985 million rand. The shocking news later in 2024 was when the Department of Labour announced that 2.5 billion rand has so far recovered from employers who fraudulently claimed these benefits. Now, yet again in 2025, we must take note of a 500 million Spaza Shop Support Fund, which the Minister of Trade and Industry granted. The Minister of Small Business Development said that this money was made available to help Spaza Shop owners to comply with the necessary measures. Hierdie fonds is 'n gesamentlike fonds met die Departement van Klein Sake Ontwikkeling en van Handel, Nywerheid en Mededinging. Alhoewel hierdie dalk klink na 'n baie goeie edele poging om eienaars van Spaza winkels te help om aan die nodige regulasies te voldoen en om klein sakebelange te bevorder en uit te brei, moet ons die eerlike vraag vra of die ANC ooit weer vertrou kan word met 'n fonds soos hierdie na afloop van die COVID-19 tragedie. Die antwoord is duidelik nee. It will not help the ANC or its ministers to come with arguments that the two departments will be contributing to this fund. The fact of the matter is that this is still the taxpayers' money, but stand a huge chance of being looted through corruption. The VF Plus is of the opinion that not a single ANC minister or the president can be trusted, ever again, with any fund of any kind. We can promise you today that the Spaza Shop Support Fund will be looted due to the incompetence of the ANC. Hierdie geld kan eerder aangewend word om munisipale wetstoepassing te versterk en uit te brei, veral wanneer dit kom by die polisieering van hierdie informele kosafsetpunte. Hierdie geld kan ook aangewend word om plaaslike regerings te help om meer gesondheidsinspekteurs in hierdie sektor aan te stel en op te lei. En hierdie fondse kan eerder aangewend word om meer medisyne in openbare klinieke beskikbaar te stel. The fact of the matter is that this fund was only created to open the door for a few officials or politicians to enrich themselves. And this fund will not be used effectively, and it will be misappropriated. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honourable Ngubeni.
Thank you, House Chair, and good afternoon to honourable members. Honourable Chairperson, the 500 million Spaza Shop Support Fund is not merely a budget item, but a test of whether we can deliver real economic justice for South Africa's most marginalized. If mismanaged, this fund won't uplift the poor. It will entrench poverty, embolden criminal syndicates, and put the lives of our children at risk. Townships are the beating heart of the informal economy, contributing an estimated 200 billion rand annually. Yet these communities remain under siege from lawlessness and neglect. Spaza shops are central to this economy. Over 200,000 shops employ 1 million people and serve millions more with affordable essentials. These businesses, often run by young South Africans, could be the engines of local growth, but instead they are crowded out by unregulated competition, poor oversight, and criminal infiltration. House Chair, this House knows too well the tragedies that have occurred when government turns a blind eye. Last year alone, we saw heartbreaking stories of children poisoned by counterfeit snacks sold in unregulated spaza shops. This is not an issue of exclusion or neglect. It's a matter of national failure. A failure to protect our people, a failure to enforce the law, and a failure to invest with accountability. Too many shops operate outside the law, unlicensed, untaxed, and often run by foreign syndicates who bypass the legal requirements to invest and register their businesses. In our view, this must stop, Honorable Chair. We must ask how many foreign nationals have registered for spaza shops. We received that answer just yesterday from the minister. The issue is not whether they are documented. The issue is whether they are legal and they are complying with South African laws. Where is the minimum 500 million investment legally required for foreign nationals willing to open businesses in this country? Who is monitoring this requirement? Why are South African entrepreneurs subject to red tape while others bypass the system entirely? These are not xenophobic questions. They are accountability questions. They are questions any responsible government must be able to answer in the interest of the rule of law and the economic fairness, and most importantly, the prioritization of citizens first. That is why we as Action SA are demanding these three things. First, the fund must be linked to enforceable criteria. Only South African citizens who meet the basic compliance, safety, and registration standards should benefit. We cannot allow taxpayer money to flow to unregistered or illegal businesses. Second, Parliament must exercise oversight. We call for quarterly reports to this House detailing how many shops have been supported, where the money has gone, and whether those businesses have registered, created jobs, and improved compliance. Third, the fund must work in tandem with the regulatory reforms we have tabled through our Spaza for Locals campaign as Action SA. Our legislative amendments will ensure that Spaza shops are South African owned, that penalties are strengthened, that counterfeit goods are banned, and that municipalities must support local entrepreneurs with training, registration, and access to finance. Finally, House Chair, we are not against foreign nationals. We've said this ad nauseum, but we are unashamedly for South Africans, for citizens first. Criminality, corruption, and state failure are locking South Africans out of our own economy. This fund is a chance to reverse that trend if we are bold enough to act with integrity. Let us not pour good money into bad governance. Let us empower the township economy with fairness, oversight, and a firm stand against criminality. We end by saying, Spaza for locals, Spaza for growth, Spaza for shops.
Thank you, Honourable
And
Member.
in a nutshell, we must put citizens first. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Fring.
Honourable House Chairperson, the ACDP believes that we are living through a pivotal moment in South Africa's history, one where necessity sparks innovation and local industries, including spaza shops, step up to shape a new economy. The cessation of the United States aid must encourage self-reliance and serve as a catalyst, awakening a long overdue realization that the future of African industry lies in homegrown ingenuity and not foreign dependency. The ACDP views the ubiquitous Spaza Shop as a ready-made opportunity to grow our industrial base. Although they are predominantly suppliers of basic foodstuff, the 500 million Spaza Shop Support Fund, if used ethically, could assist Spaza shops to transcend their traditional roles. If equipped with digital infrastructure, they could offer Wi-Fi services, printing, mobile banking, and e-commerce logistics, which could in turn transform them into tech access hubs, supporting digital inclusion in our rural areas. Additionally, by establishing cooperatives, they could become value adders to our raw materials through beneficiation and evolve into small-scale production centers, crafting household essentials like detergents and toiletries, and even textiles, fostering industrial growth while maintaining their community-centric essence. This obviously would help reduce imports and support much-needed job creation in South Africa. The Spaza Shop Support Fund cannot be used to support illegal foreigners' businesses. It does, however, have the potential to turn township hubs into innovation powerhouses, positioning local manufacturing to supply quality goods, not only in the immediate neighborhood, but to neighboring countries, strengthening regional trade and fostering an ecosystem of African exports that rivals international competitors. The ACDP sees this as a possibility, one that comes with good governance, designed to ensure accountability, transparency, responsiveness, and the rule of law, inclusiveness, and broad-based participation. But House Chairperson, unless the Spaza Shop Support Fund of 500 million embraces the guidelines given by our ACDP leader, Reverend Dr. Meshoe, and applies good governance principles, it will be open to abuse like the PPE scandals and further impoverish multitudes of South Africans. The ACDP will keep a keen eye on this particular fund to ensure that all South Africans are treated equitably. I thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker on behalf of the UDM on the platform? A speaker on behalf of Rise Mzansi? Someone representing the ATM? If not, then I recognize the Honorable Molotsane.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon, everyone. Chairperson, may I switch off my video?
You are welcome, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Chair. As we mark 31 years since the democratic dispensation, we need to acknowledge that in recent years, South Africa has prioritized inclusive economic development as a response to high unemployment, inequality, and poverty. One of the most promising interventions in this regard is the government decision to earmark 500 million for the Spaza Shop Support Fund. This fund resonates with the state of the nation, which was presented by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The SONA stated that we are broadening our support for small and medium enterprises, as well as the informal sector, which provide employment and sustains livelihood for millions across the country. The SONA further stated that government plans to simplify access to funding for small businesses, making venture capital more available for high-growth startups, and creating a regulatory framework that supports the growth of SMMEs. With regard to the 500 million for the Spaza Shop Support Fund, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Pakstau, stated that fund aims to reshape the Spaza Shop sector by generating employment, reducing poverty, fostering inclusive economic participation, and driving local economic development. Each Spaza shop will be eligible to receive up to 300,000 in support, made available through a mix of grants and low-interest loans. Funding is designated for purposes such as purchasing initial stock, upgrading shop infrastructure, acquiring business tools, and adopting point-of-sale system. Additionally, the fund will support shop owners in complying with hygiene and regulatory requirements to ensure the sale of safe, quality products. Beyond its monetary value, the fund represents a strategic investment in grassroots entrepreneurship, self-employment, and economic justice. Economic transformation is the key to inclusive economic growth and development. The registration of Spaza shops has been a crucial step towards unlocking the full potential of South Africa's township and informal economies. Traditionally operating outside formal regulatory frameworks, many of these enterprises faced challenges in accessing funding, support services, and integration into broader economic development strategies, while at the same time playing an important role in townships. However, through registration, Spaza shops became visible and trackable within the formal system, which opens up opportunities for business empowerment, growth, and sustainability. One of the main barriers faced by informal businesses is the inability to access funding from banks or government development programs. Registered Spaza shops, however, can now qualify for initiatives such as the 500 million Spaza Shop Support Fund, which offers a mix of grants and low interest loans. Registration ensures accountability and enables monitoring of how funds are used, thus encouraging responsible business practices and promoting long-term sustainability. It also enables transparency in the process within the context of an administrative system dealing with the fund. It is incorrect to cry wolf all the time because when the wolf really comes, no one takes it seriously. Some SMME businesses struggle to grow sustainably due to a lack of skills and knowledge in core business functions. Providing targeted training in financial management, pricing strategies, regulatory compliance, and inventory control is essential for equipping entrepreneurs with the tools they need to build resilient, competitive, and profitable enterprises. The National School of Government has the ability to assist here. The school provides multiple courses in human resource management, monitoring and evaluation, and financial management. Training as financial management helps business owners understand how to manage working capital, track income and expenses accurately, prepare simple financial statement, monitor profitability, and manage debt, and plan for growth and reinvest profits wisely. Equipping entrepreneurs with skills enables better financial discipline, informed decision-making, and access to credit or investment opportunities. Training in financial management, pricing strategies, compliance, and inventory control is not just about improving business operation. It is about empowering entrepreneurs with the knowledge and skills needed to thrive in a competitive environment. When small business owners are equipped with these tools, they are better positioned to grow their enterprises, employ others, and contribute to the local and national economy. In a country like South Africa, where township and informal economies are central to economic inclusion, investing in such training is a direct investment in sustainable development and poverty reduction. We therefore cannot depart from the premise that officials and Spaza shop owners are thieves or corrupt officials, and therefore depart from the principle of economic transformation for the majority of the population. Stereotypes have no role to play in a serious transformation project. In an era where entrepreneurship is a key driver of economic growth and job creation, the importance of structured support for emerging businesses cannot be overstated. One of the most effective strategies to nurture innovation and sustainability among startups and small enterprises is through facilitation of partnership with local development agencies and business incubators. This collaboration creates a vital ecosystem of mentorship, resources, and networking opportunities, particularly for entrepreneurs in under-resourced communities. Some of the examples we have witnessed over the years include the Innovation Hub and Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, small enterprise development agency, and incubation centers, and a national youth development agency and Microsoft. Local development agencies are often well positioned to understand the unique socio-economic challenges and potential of specific regions. They possess grassroots knowledge, access to funding mechanism, and a mandate to stimulate inclusive growth. Mentorship is a crucial element within the ecosystem. It bridges the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application. Experienced mentors can provide insight into business strategy, financial management, compliance, marketing, and innovation. The partnership between local development agencies and business incubators are particularly essential in marginalized communities, where entrepreneurs often face barriers such as lack of capital, limited network, and insufficient exposure to market opportunities. By leveraging local knowledge and institutionalized support, development agencies and incubators can tailor mentorship programs to address specific gaps in knowledge and resources. This localized and need-based approach ensures that the interventions are relevant, sustainable, and impactful. Furthermore, facilitating these partnerships contributes to broader national goals, such as reducing unemployment, promoting innovation, and building a more inclusive economy. Governments, nonprofit, and private sector can play a catalytic role by creating policies and funding instruments that incentivize such collaborations. Speaker, House Chair, irrespective of the topic of this debate, we must defeat the challenge of poverty, inequality, unemployment, and historic economic inclusion to achieve economic transformation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Is there a speaker representing Al Jamal? If not, then I call on the NCC, the PAC, the UAT, Good Party. If not, then Honorable Singh, it's your opportunity.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The 500 million rand Spaza Shop Support Fund, co-financed by the Departments of Small Business Development and Trade, Industry and Competition, is a welcome step in financing under-resourced SMMEs. But there remain questions that must be dealt with. There is still no clarity on which department holds ultimate responsibility for its oversight and administration. This ambiguity threatens the integrity of the fund and opens the door to potential mismanagement. It is unclear how Parliament will effectively monitor disbursements, as well as who will be held accountable if funds are misappropriated. Previous handlings of stimulus packages have not inspired confidence from the public. We must change public perception of government, as South Africans are in dire need of a growing economy that delivers jobs. Everything that government does must be considered in this frame. In addition to issues of transparency, there are also bureaucratic concerns. For instance, how this fund differs from existing programs under the Departments of Small Business Development or Trade, Industry and Competition. Without clear differentiation, this initiative risks duplicating existing efforts and inflating administrative costs unnecessarily. We cannot afford to create more bureaucracy while small businesses struggle on the ground. As a constructive partner in government, we offer the following proposals to better strengthen the fund. 1. Transparent allocation and disbursement. There must be full public disclosure of how funds are distributed, who the beneficiaries are, and the criteria used in their allocation. A dedicated online portal should allow real-time tracking of all disbursements to ensure ultimate transparency and accountability. 2. Strict eligibility criteria. Clear, verifiable requirements must be set. Recipients must be registered with the CIPC, be tax compliant, hold a valid business license, and provide proof of operation. 3. Strong oversight and auditing. Parliament must be allowed full oversight, either through the Small Business or Trade and Industry Committees or through a joint committee. the committee must be briefed on a regular basis to ensure trust and accountability in the fund and its underlying systems. 4. Monitoring and evaluation framework. Key performance indicators, such as the number of shops supported, jobs created, and revenue growth, must be used to assess impact and guide improvements. Regular evaluations will help ensure the fund remains responsive and effective. And fifthly, capacity building and support. Financial assistance must be paired with training and mentorship to ensure recipients use funds for sustainable growth, whether for inventory, equipment, or compliance upgrades. Implementing these measures will help to ensure the fund's effectiveness and the prudent use of government finances. In addition to ensuring the effective management of the support fund, we must also learn from lessons that brought us here. This fund emerged after the tragic deaths of children who were sold unsafe foods. We must learn from this tragedy in ensuring that SMMEs can be effectively monitored. This includes ensuring sufficient health inspectors, as well as local governments effectively enforcing licensing and bylaws. In addition, in ensuring compliance, there must also be a concerted effort to cut regulations which hamper businesses from registration and ultimately creating jobs. The support fund in itself will be less effective if it is not in tandem with a detailed review of regulations that wrap economic growth in red tape. Presently, there are complex bureaucratic processes and inefficiencies of municipal systems. The solution lies in embracing digital innovation. The City of Cape Town has led the way by introducing an e-registration platform for informal traders, drastically simplifying the application process. This model should be replicated nationwide, which the Department of Small Business Development must champion. The department, as well as trade and industry, must ensure streamlined processes that allow entrepreneurs to formalize their businesses easily, pay taxes, and obtain necessary licenses and permits without facing endless obstacles. Spaza shops are woven into the fabric of township and rural economies. They provide essential goods and services, especially to communities far from urban centers. Their importance cannot be overstated. Growing these businesses will not only deliver jobs to marginalized groups, but also help to ensure redress in creating a more equal country. Government must act decisively to level the playing field. This means investing in small business incubation and enterprise development. For example, the Khayelitsha Bandwidth Barn, a township-based tech hub, is equipping young entrepreneurs with tech and business skills while providing access to infrastructure and market connections. Such initiatives must be replicated across the country. Ultimately, creating equal opportunity in our society will require genuine collaboration with the private sector. No business can thrive long-term if it operates in a society in decline. At the same time, no society can flourish without successful, job-creating enterprises in a growing economy. The synergy between public accountability and private innovation is what will truly drive inclusive economic development. The 500 million Rand Spaza Shop Support Fund has the potential to make a meaningful impact, but only if it is managed with discipline, transparency, and integrity. Anything less would be a betrayal of the very communities it aims to uplift. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Male Macha.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to not use the camera.
You're welcome, Honorable Member.
No, thank you so much. Chairperson, thank you so much. Honorable members on the platform and those who are in a form of television, fellow South Africans, business sector in particular. Today we are gathered here to talk to you on the initiative of the government to ensure that you are part and parcel of this economy. Honorable Chairperson, small, medium, and micro enterprise SMEs are widely acknowledged as the backbone of many economies across the world. In both developed and developing nations, these enterprises play a vital role in driving economic growth, sustainability, generating employment, fostering innovation, and reducing poverty. Their contribution is particularly significant in countries like South Africa, where the formal economy struggles to absorb growing labor force and where inclusive development remains a national priority. SMEs are major contributors to microeconomic development. As Chairperson, one of the most compelling contributions of SMEs is their ability to create jobs. Globally, SMEs account for over 90% of all businesses and more than 50% of employment. In South Africa, SMEs absorb around 60% of the labor forces in the private sector. Unlike large corporations, SMEs often operate within the local communities, making them better positioned to employ people from disadvantaged backgrounds, including women, youth, persons with disabilities. This employment capacity makes SMEs a crucial tool in the fight against poverty and inequality. In our case, this is an engine for economic transformation and therefore must be supported. Our Chair, as highlighted above, SMEs are vital for development and transformation of South African economy. The ANC's 55th National Conference even resolved that solutions are needed to address the unjust lack of access to capital, particularly SMEs, women and youth-owned enterprises. The Department of Small Business Development has implemented several targeted programs to support the growth of SMEs, with particular emphasis on the township and rural economies. These programs aim to create sustainability in enterprises that uplift economies, reduce structural inequality in the South African economy, as well as poverty and unemployment. One of the FLIC intervention by the department is the Township and Rural Entrepreneur Program, right, designed to support informal and micro enterprise in the underserved area, helping them transit into formal economy. TREP program focuses on a specific sector with high growth potential, such as automotive service, clothing, textile, personal care, and recycling. Through TREP, entrepreneurs receive financial support in a form of blended finance, such as grants and loans. Entrepreneurs also receive business development trainings, tool of trainings, access to market. Another significant initiative is the Small Enterprise Manufacturing Support Program, which targets small-scale manufacturers, especially those operating in township and peri-urban areas. This program assists businesses in acquiring equipment, improving productivity, scaling their operation. It recognizes the manufacturing sector's potential for job creation and import substitution, aligning closely with South Africans' re-industrialization objectives. Another prominent program initiative is the Informal Micro Enterprise Development Program, also play a key role in uplifting the township and rural economy. It provides infrastructure, training, working capital for informal traders and survivalist businesses. Through the above, the department aims to address challenges such as lack of business skills, inadequate infrastructure, limited access to funding. The department needs to urgently place measures to ensure that the intended beneficiary of the 500 million earmarked for the Spaza Shop Support Fund truly receive the support. This due to concern around corruption, mismanagement, misappropriation of public funds in our society. Combating crime, House Chair, is imperative to ensure that funds are utilized for their intended purposes. Our 2024 General Election Manifesto indicates this by stating that we aim to ensure greater accountability and prevention of corruption through rigorous lifestyle audits and improve vetting procedures, real-time audit of critical projects, using artificial intelligence to improve accountability and transparency and strengthening discipline of management, as well as strengthening law enforcement agency and other anti-corruption bodies. However, our point of departure cannot be based on a fake narrative as if there was already magnificence with regard to the funds. This requires to be demonstrated based on evidence. Evidence in this regard means the necessary involvement of law enforcement agency to deal with evidence and those involved. House Chair, it is very unholy and very unholy for Honorable Meshoe as a priest that can't see these initiatives, instead regard this as governance failures. However, we are not surprised because Honorable Meshoe is one of those who are in the sight of Israel, can even visit Israel, and they don't see anything wrong, including the exclusion of those who were previously disadvantaged by the apartheid regime, that economy was just an activity where they were not supposed to do. But we further know that you cannot liberate a slave who found comfort in his captivity. Honorable Meshoe don't see anything wrong when supporting Israel against the Palestinians. That is why he missed when we announced that the registration of the Spaza shop is meant to register those who are in the country. Equally so, the very same money is meant for those who are in the country, those who have been previously disadvantaged, Honorable Meshoe. There shall be no even a single cent that will miss. But in South Africa, we have got all these bodies that are very good, well positioned to deal with their matter. In case of the man that is missing, Honorable Meshoe and other doubting Thomas, you can visit the Hawks, they will assist. It's not only the Hawks, SIU can also assist. Even the Auditor General do assist to deal with the representative matters when we're dealing with the matter of money. So it can be correct that when the government of the day is coming with initiatives, then the doubting Thomas, such as the FF+, they only say because it's the government of the black people cannot be trusted. Yes, we know it was going to be if they were to bring Debbie Lewis, who killed Chris Hani, can only the person who to be trusted. And we are saying this must come to an end. The government of today has got all preventative measures to ensure that the 500 million Spaza Shop Support Fund is protected. As those who are written, by the way, to say it has to be ring-fenced. It has already been ring-fenced. It can't be there and said 500 million Spaza Shop Support Fund when it's not ring-fenced. It is already ring-fenced to assist the Spaza shop owners in the township. Honorable Chair, allow me to say, jolo ba la jola ka re mme mma re gale ya ba ka ba kumana ya ka ra dibuka ja di-Guptas ke ka mo today ba kry-ile comfort ka ra buka ja di-Guptas ba bile ba nana gore ba ka bo seja mantswe morago mara se se tholwa ke taba ya gore ga ba tsebe gore re bolela ka taba ya tšhelete ya Spaza shop ke ka mo ba bapetšago tšhelete ya Spaza shop le taba ja bo Alexander renewal ndao checka gore be report o irileng ga ba tsebe ka gore ba bolela ka taba ya COVID-19 re bolela ka o tlhatlola borakgwebo potlana gore le bona ba tshwane le ba bangwe ba sempato. House Chair, Honorable Kruger, you will need a lesson because where I'm standing, I don't think you even know the size of the Spaza shop we're talking. I don't even believe that you know a Spaza you ever bought from a Spaza. But because of the comfort you found in the apartheid regime where you belong, and you are also benefiting today in the democratic dispensation, that is why you are so eagerly to become a red tape of our own people to get this fund. This fund is meant for the Spaza shop owners so that they be at the level of those that benefited in the apartheid regime. House Chair, one of the most effective ways to prevent and expose fraud, corruption, and maladministration is to encourage the public and official to report any malfeasance to the relevant authorities. Reporting mechanisms such as anonymous hotline, as earlier was suggested, as if we are not having gray hair enough to can think, secure email portals, partnership, and all these institutions, including Chapter 9, this can assist. Thank you so much, House Chair. Thank you, Real Level.
Thank you, Honorable Malemache. Honorable Reverend Meshoe, it's your opportunity now to reply to the debate.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and thank you to all honorable members that have participated in this debate and suggested very positive and constructive ideas of what should be done to ensure that this fund goes to where it was designated to go. Unlike Ntate Malemacha, I unswabishitse man, o ka re o rata Israel kudu do itlisha le mo sa tshwanela go tsena hona. But we ra go tshwarela papa ra go tshwarela. For all those contributions, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It is obviously disappointing that the Malemacha does not accept that government has many flaws, government has many people who are thieves, who have stolen money that was meant for the poor. That is why we are talking about ring-fencing this 500 million rand so that the thieves that are there, some call them the jackals, some call them the hyenas, whoever, whatever they call them, this money must be protected from them so that it will go to the people that are qualified to have it, particularly South Africans. I trust that the Minister of Small Business has heard our members, all honorable members, who emphasize the importance of South African citizens being the ones who become the major beneficiaries of this money. It is very unfortunate to hear and to know that over 80% of Spaza Shop in townships are owned by and run by foreign nationals. Is because government of Ntate Malemacha has not done anything to protect South Africans who were invaded by people, many of them who came into the country illegally. So we are saying this anomaly has to be reversed. We cannot have the majority of people outside having more Spaza shops than the people who are in the land. And we cannot have people who come from outside benefiting from this 500 million rands more than the locals. Spaza shops in South Africa must come first, and this money must benefit them more than any other person. We want government to ensure that we have sufficient health inspectors. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Reverend Meshoe. Honorable members, that concludes this debate and the business of this virtual mini-plenary. The mini-plenary will now rise.